All right, thanks, Nick. Oops, we got a little feedback here.
It's right over the wall.
Oh, okay. All right, I call to order a meeting of the Hartford Selectboard on May 13th at 6:02 p.m. I would like to say this meeting is a hybrid meeting, which means that some or all of the public body is meeting remotely, and some are meeting physically in a previously noticed location where the public may attend to observe, listen, and participate contemporaneously. One member of this public body or other staff is present at the location to ensure the public can participate if desired. Please note that while we will strive to provide means for those attending remotely to participate in the public comment period, there may be technical difficulties or reasons that otherwise prevent or interrupt remote public participation. Therefore, it is important to note that the open meeting law only ensures the public's right to participate and comment at a public meeting by attending at the designated physical location as posted in the notice and agenda. If a member of the public or of the public body has technical difficulties accessing this meeting remotely, please alert us by email to selectboard@hartford-bt.org. In the event of a technical difficulty that cannot be resolved, we may continue the meeting if necessary to time and place certain. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting that are not unanimous will be done by roll call vote in accordance with the law. As required by the open meeting law, let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance of all members participating in the meeting and have those members attending remotely identify themselves to ensure that they can hear and be heard throughout the meeting. Let's start with Mike, who is online.
Hi, everyone. Mike Hoyt, I can see you and hear you.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, Eric?
I'm here.
Thank you. Miranda?
I'm here too.
All right. Ida?
Present.
Thank you. Brandon?
I'm here.
Ashley?
Here.
And Mary Erdai. We are all here, all present. Okay, so next up is the Pledge of Allegiance. Is there anybody in the public or anyone else who would like to lead Pledge of Allegiance?
Happy to do it.
All right, thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, John.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to close the Hartford Select Board and open as the local liquor control board. And we'll be doing these renewals, these 5 renewals like we have before. The only difference being since Mike is online and we are under a roll call vote, but that at the end, we will be voting roll call vote. Okay, so since renewal applications don't require anybody is here, and I'm assuming there's no one from any of the places that are requesting renewals. All right, so is there a motion that someone would like to make for these 5 renewals? Okay, Ashley. No,
I move to approve the renewal application for Quechee General Store, Inc. at 5573 Woodstock Road, Quechee, Vermont, 05059. The renewal application for Tuckerbox, 1 South Main Street, White River Junction, Vermont, 05001. That's a first class, third class, and outside consumption. A renewal for the Jake's Quechee Market at 7161 Woodstock Road, Quechee, Vermont, 05059. That's a second class and tobacco license. The renewal for Neshobe River Company, Foley Brothers Brewing at Quechee Gorge Tasting Room, 5573 West Woodstock Road, Quechee, Vermont, 05759. That's a first class and outside consumption. And the renewal for the Public House at Quechee Gorge, the Public House Pub, 5813 Woodstock Road, Quechee, Vermont, 05059. That's a first class, third class, and outside consumption.
Okay, is there a second? Here, Or you had,
Madam Chair, I wanted to make a friendly amendment. I think on the first one for Quechee General Store, I just want to indicate that it's for a second class license.
yes,
Thank you.
you accept the friendly amendment?
Accepted.
All right.
Then I will second that motion.
All right, thank you, Eric. Okay, so let's start with Ashley then, with a vote.
Aye.
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 Mike?
Aye.
And I will vote aye. So that is 7-0. And those renewals are done. So then I would like to close as the local liquor control board and open as the Hartford Selectboard. We won't have any local cannabis control board business as there is none. And so then we will move on to the order of agenda. Are there any changes to the order of agenda or anything else that may be added or deleted? Okay, great. Thank you. So then we will begin first with public comment. And please remember that if you come up to the mic, that you end up giving us your name and your residence and address the select board as a whole. You have 3 minutes and no personal attacks, please. Thank you, Peter.
Is there anyone wish to comment ahead?
I think they'd get in line if they were.
Well, Pete Zandron, no introduction. White River Junction, no missing my place. Before I make any comments, if there's going to be anything about the Palestine Amendment or what's going on over there, please let me know so I can reserve my comments. So
Okay,
I didn't.
I don't know if there is any.
There's nothing on the agenda.
Right.
All right, because among other things, what's going on with Madawi and Ramzi Al Turk, it does have me concerned. Well, I'm glad to see them out. I mean, the legal defense for them and others in the community has been so half-assed, they could easily be re-detained on any number of pretexts because of the way they were released. Consider that. Now, if you're going to be bringing up Friday's event about, me and other people, we have ripped some flyers for Friday's event down because one, with advanced transit being involved, me, Bob, and Liz still are having issues because of what happened earlier, right before Thanksgiving. In case you haven't noticed those two out in front here every morning, it's heartbreaking, especially how something like that could be so easily resolved. And what Montpelier said, but now it's another pain in the ass dealing with Concord, have to do with their system because of what happened. The incident happened in New Hampshire, but it was a Vermont transit company.
You want to tell us, Peter, what Friday
that
you're talking about?
The whole transit, like car-free event.
Okay.
And that also because like I said, me and a few people have ripped down some flyers because one, we still have that concern with it. As I said, some of the other transit companies in town, they are better serviced. And among other things, one problem that we have like with the bikes and scooters and other things, I'm across from the VA, me and other people there are flashback just because of the problems with the bikes and the scooters over there. Now, this is a problem I've encountered before in Newport and New London, especially so close, and it's common with places close to military facilities that people should know better about that and just look across the river, what's going on at Dartmouth, essentially thanks to groups like Critical Mass who are using bikes as weapons against people. Their administration are basically just letting students fooling around on those things act out just to menace protesters. And before I get back to the transit issue, I did have to hand, because I mentioned before about people getting stranded here in town because of recent issues with Greyhound and no longer allowing cash purchases. Well, we just had a family stranded here this past weekend. I took their stories Saturday. I spoke to them at the Haven first thing in the Monday morning about this because it's heartbreaking to see someone get stranded over a technological malfunction. And part of it, we do have one family across the street who has been pretending to be indigent, and it causes trouble for those in the community who really are indigent.
Thank you, Peter.
So it's more extra work I hope to talk with you more about this.
All right. Thank you, Peter. Okay, any other, there's no one online? Anyone else in? Okay, so then, next is select board comments and announcements. I'll start with Eric.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have nothing tonight.
Okay. Brandon? Thank you.
Yes, I do want to comment tonight to the public on the topic of recycling. First of all, I just want to thank everyone who wrote to the select board about recycling in the past 2 weeks. I read all your emails and I thought about your comments, and I really appreciate people taking the time to express their views to the select board, and especially those who offer suggestions for possible avenues we could consider in the future. I want to emphasize that my vote in our last meeting was not a vote against recycling. It was a vote not to sign a contract for a curbside pickup that would have cost the town over $500,000 per year and was a massive increase from our current contract, which is ending June 30th. I also want to reassure residents that myself and other members of this board are grappling with this issue. We're thinking about it. We are sometimes losing sleep about it. We're researching it. We're talking to residents about it, and we're talking to industry experts. And we're trying to identify future solutions. From what I've heard from residents, 4 factors that people care about when it comes to recycling are convenience, accessibility, environmentalism, and cost. And I'm hoping in the future we can come up with a plan that balances these 4 factors. I've also heard that as a board and a town staff, we didn't do enough to engage the public on this topic before it was time to make a decision about the curbside pickup contract. And that is a very valid criticism, and I take it to heart. And as a board, I hope we can continue to improve our ability to pinpoint key decision points and plan far in advance so we can hold appropriate forums to solicit input and discussion on issues that really matter to people in our community. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ida. Brandon?
Yes, I think I just wanted to piggyback off of what Pete was saying and pick up this topic again briefly of Greyhound and any other retailer in town, frankly, not accepting cash as a method of payment. I know, John, you and I had very briefly discussed last year just how some other cities and towns across the country have put it into their ordinances that businesses have to accept cash as a method of payment and specifically for anyone who is unaware, that's become kind of a trend, and unfortunately it kind of disadvantages the folks who don't have access to a bank account and who are or who may be like prohibited from opening a bank account, and they live their lives with cash, which is totally acceptable and frankly the lawful thing in the United States.
Legal tender for all debts, public and private.
Right. Yes. So I believe in that very much, and believe in access, and and just the idea that Greyhound, which serves a lot of disadvantaged residents, doesn't accept cash it doesn't sit very well with me. And so I'd like to ask John, maybe this is something we could explore between now and the next meeting.
Sure.
The possibility, kind of the legal possibility of us making an ordinance saying that businesses in our town have to accept cash.
I'd be happy to research it with the help of our friends at VLCT, and that might be an issue that other towns have grappled with. They may even have some guidance on language or reasons why one should have pause before enacting such an ordinance. And I'll be happy to report back.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Brandon. Ashley?
I just have a small update that I've been kind of receiving a lot of feedback from some tenants in the Upper Valley who you may have seen some things in the news recently about some like safety issues and fires and concerns about safety at some of the newer rental units in Hartford. And I just want to put it out there that I am working to talk with tenants and help address their needs, and put it out there that if anyone is interested in connecting on that topic, I am available, and that if other board members are interested, just let me know.
Thank you. Mike, do you have any announcements or select board comments?
Just that I'm looking forward to seeing everyone next meeting in the flesh.
That's okay. I hope you and Natalie have fun where you're at. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So, oops, did we kind of slide off here?
It's all right though, Nick, is that right? Your recording is fine?
Yeah.
The Zoom is working?
Okay, all right.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just a minor point of clarification. I understand, I support what Brandon was speaking about. I think in practice, don't we generally try to, even if it's not a vote, just develop sort of a general straw poll or consensus when we're directing the town?
Yeah, certainly my practice has been, Eric, thank you for that. My practice has been to be very accommodating where I can of what I think is a discrete, but that if I believe that something might take some significant amount of my time or staff's time, generally to seek select board guidance about that. But it's a new board. You can develop your own practices and protocols as you see fit. I see no trouble doing a quick bit of research and reporting back. And at the same time, if you want to do it in a different way, that's fine with me too.
Fair enough. I'm supportive of that request or ask. I just want to make sure we're not sending you lots of individual requests, not as acting as a board.
I do very much respect and appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, so we have a new appointment coming up here to consider the appointment of Kathy Melisek to the Hartford 250th Commemoration Committee for a term beginning May 13th, 2025 and ending on September 1st, 2027. Do you want to step up? And that way, if anyone has some questions, hopefully they've done the reading, so we know a little bit more about you.
My name is Kathy Melisek. I'm from Wilder, Vermont, and I'm interested in joining this committee, and I've messaged some of the members before putting in my full application. I remember the bicentennial celebration, so old. I remember the bicentennial celebration and how truly wonderful that was. I remember the freedom train that came through. And despite all the differences, and I mean, that was it was 1 year after the fall of Saigon. I mean, it really did bring people together in the state of Vermont. And I would like to work towards something like that with this celebration. And I'm happy to answer any questions or stand here.
Question online. Okay, let me first ask and see if there's anybody on the board who has a question for Kathy. All right, and we'll take the question online.
Okay, Gwen, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Gwen Tucson. I live in Hartford and I am the chairperson for the 250th committee. And I have learned a little bit about Kathy from other members on the committee, and I'm happy to have her join. Looking forward to it.
I feel so loved.
Can I ask Gwen, I think this might bring us up to 6 of the 7 members we've been looking for. Is that accurate, Gwen?
Yes, this would be 6.
Good.
Thank you, Gwen. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
So I'll entertain a motion. So let's start with whoever.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
If that's what you're looking for.
Yes, I'm looking for a motion.
Great.
And then go ahead. You want to read it?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will move that the select board appoint Kathy Melisek to the Hartford 250th Commemoration Committee for a term beginning May 13th, 2025 and ending on September 1, 2027 or earlier.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. I don't know which one.
I heard Miranda. I heard Miranda first. I was clerking it.
All right, Miranda second. It's been moved and seconded. Eric and then Miranda. We'll do the roll call vote here. Let's start with Mike since he's on.
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Miranda? Aye. Ida?
Aye.
Brandon?
Aye.
Ashley?
Aye.
And I'll say aye. So unanimous vote. Thank you very much. Kathy.
Congratulations.
Yes,
Thank you, Kathy.
congratulations.
Have fun.
All right. Okay, so that ends that aspect. Let's move on to the town manager report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Negotiations on the terms of a contract with the new clerical workers union resumed with a session on Friday, May 2nd. There'll be another one on Friday, May 23rd, and 2 or 3 more scheduled thereafter at least. I'm pleased to report that the local district office of VTrans has recommended that the town of Hartford receive a $175,000 paving grant. Some of you may recall last year's budget cycle, during which the select board voted to reduce the 2026 paving budget by $150,000. So good news and welcome and well-timed. It's not a done deal until Montpelier signs off, but I'm told that's generally what happens. I'm also pleased to report the town's received full funding for a municipal planning grant, which will enable the town to hire a consultant to help the town reinvigorate the town's capital improvement plan. I'd like to thank Lori and Matt and the whole planning and development department for their assistance in securing this funding for this important project. Stay tuned as we roll out plans to engage staff, the select board, the public in this capital improvement plan process. On the evening of Thursday, May 8th, there was a gathering of select board members from across Windsor County. Thanks to our friends at VLCT, Two Rivers Ottaquechee Planning Commission, and the Mount Escutney Regional Commission for organizing this event. It was fun for us to meet with members from other towns in the county, dealing with some similar and some different issues altogether. I will be out of the office Thursday and Friday, but available by phone and email as needed, as I'll be attending the Vermont Town and City Managers Association Spring Conference. I do have a few SIGACs to highlight, particularly from the assessing department. As you can imagine, there's a lot of interest in the assessing department lately. They have mailed value change notices with new 2025 property values to taxpayers. They have posted old to new values report and sales report on the town's website and left copies in town libraries and with the town clerk at their counter and at the assessing department counter. The Beacon website has also been updated with the 2025 values. I believe the deadline for signing up for grievances is this coming Friday, so go online or call the assessor's office. Better yet, read the notice you got in the mail. It tells you how to go online and secure a 15-minute window of time for your potential grievance if you'd like. The White River Junction pollution abatement plant has some news. They continue working with an engineering firm to develop a scope of work to replace the equipment damaged in the basement flooding event of several weeks ago. The fire department notes that we should send out congratulations to probationary firefighters Nick Alden, Matthew McCabe, and Deputy Fire Marshal Amy Jerome for successful completion of the Vermont Fire Academy Firefighter Level 2 program. The Planning and Development Office notes that the townwide survey on the rental housing inventory has been officially launched. This is for renters and another for landlords. Look for posters in the libraries, the Bugbee Center and around town, or click the QR code or take the survey, or go directly to town's website. The police department notes that outreach and patrol divisions have handled many calls for service in reference to the multiple unhoused residents in town. They have been able to connect some with community services, which is a promising step in a positive direction. Outreach has done an excellent job of having vehicles removed from the park and ride, either by towing or owner removal. The Criminal Investigations Division at the HPD has been involved in multiple drug-related investigations within the town and in the surrounding communities. The Environmental Sustainability Coordinator, from whom you'll hear later tonight, reports that members of the Climate Action Steering Team and Hartford Energy Commission took part in the Upper Valley Earth Week event the weekend of Saturday, April 26th. For 2 days, homeowners and organizations opened their doors to the public to show what they are doing to live more sustainably. Participants showed their solar arrays, battery storage units, and modes of transportation, and answered questions to curious attendees throughout the Upper Valley. Parks and Rec Department notes that they have been through their 5-year reaccreditation review. The 4-day virtual visit consisted of meetings with the Commission for Accreditation of Parks and Rec Agencies, or CAPRA. The review tests in place policies, procedures, and operational management systems. We hope to have a more official report as to how that process went, hoping for some good news, but stay tuned for a more official word. The Parks and Rec folks also note that they are marketing upcoming events and activities, including the promotion of the Sherman Manning Aquatic Facility season passes and swim lessons, improv comedy, senior kayaking, and card making classes. We're also collecting volunteers for Quechee Balloon Festival and pushing out all other summer programs, Just Kids Skill Camp, Rising Stars Theater Academy, Brazilian soccer camps, and Hartford Soccer Academy. And they continue to collect survey submissions for the redesign of Lyman Point Park.
Thank you, John.
Sure.
Okay, so next up are board reports, motions, and ordinances, and we will start with the Planning Commission update to the Select Board.
Good evening. I'm John Reed from Quechee, and I'll give you the report for the Planning Commission. I think it's a little bit unfortunate that I do not have any exciting new proposals for us to review. In fact, I think it's highly disappointing that in the past year or so, we've only had 4 applications for single-family residence constructions. That's down somewhat from the prior year when we had 7. But I find this disappointing because we're trying to attract qualified employees, and many of them have families and are looking for single-family residences, and we just don't seem to have an inventory for that. In terms of highlights, again, this is a little bit unusual. The highlight was that the Planning Commission had energy standards training. The state has come up with 2 new energy standard codes, and one for commercial and one for residential. And it is now the case that if you do any kind of construction, that whether it's new construction or rehab construction, and you have heating and air conditioning and the like involved, you have to comply with these new standards. Now, compliance starts with an application for a building permit. And at that time, Joanne Ells, the zoning administrator, gives the applicant or the contractor access or reference to the online standards, which are extensive. In fact, we still don't have booklets from the state that summarize these standards. So you have to go to the full set of state regulations. And then in order to get a certificate of occupancy, in the case of residential, well, I think it's the case of both actually, the contractor or a qualified engineer has to certify that the construction was done in accordance with the state energy standards. So that's the process that we're working with now. And I believe that you all met with the DPW and representatives of BlackRock to go over updating the traffic pattern at Hickory Ridge so that construction can continue up there, and assuming that all of that is in good shape for the moment. And finally, I'll say what I suspect has happened to many of us, is as you now face the former 25,000 Gifts property, you see a huge metal wall rising. Now, the plans for that wall are that it will be beautified in some way so that it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb, and also so that the top of it isn't a hazard to people who might be on the bank. But right now it's quite a sight to see, and I'm sure you've all reacted to it much the same way I did. And that's my lengthy report. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you, John. Anybody have some questions? Eric?
I do. Thank you, Madam
Okay.
Chair. What can we expect from the Planning Commission looking ahead? What are the what's in your pipeline in terms of policy and related work that the town or the board might expect to see
Well,
in
we
the next
have-
year or so?
We have two significant projects in the works. One is a new housing chapter for the town plan, and the other is an economic development chapter for the town plan. Now, those chapters have to be approved in sort of an elaborate process. That begins with public hearings and that type of thing, and ultimately they get to the select board. And I'm unable to say exactly what the timeline is for those hearings to occur, but the basic groundwork has been done, and the basic chapters have been substantially written, so it shouldn't take too much longer to get the show on the road for both of those things.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Hey, John.
Hi, Brett.
I'm the, for those who don't know, I'm the newer liaison to the Planning Commission. I have attended a couple meetings now, and I just wanted to bring to your attention on the board and the public that there might be a conversation coming up sometime in the next few months about the topic of sprinkler systems in single-family homes. That specifically the ones that are required, which are the ones further from, I think it's 500 feet from a fire hydrant.
Right.
And just from my own personal experience, I was the project manager for one of those 7 house builds last year in Hartford. And my clients who I was working with, kind of late in the process, they found out, oh gosh, I have to do a sprinkler system, because that's the rule here in the town. And for what it's worth, we are the only town of the 4 central towns in the Upper Valley to require sprinkler systems in single family homes. But it's a very long-standing thing that we have. I think it goes back 30 or 40 years. And yeah, that family I was working for, they spent $55,000 on their sprinkler system that they were not expecting to have to spend in their house build. And the town made them do it, and they had to scrimp and come up with it. And now that was one of the more traditional systems with a big tank in their basement and a hefty pump and all this. And the fire inspector has said that there are less expensive ones. So ones that might be down in the $20,000 to $30,000 range. And that's more easy to chew on when you're building a $500,000 or $600,000 or $700,000 home. But in other words, we may see a a majority of the planning commission vote to bring it to the select board, something like that, just to discuss it. And then I assume at that point we would hear from fire officials, what the impact of those are, and relative costs and things.
Interesting.
To just continue on that vein, Brandon, I was talking with Joanne Ellis today about the agenda for the June meeting. And we agreed that we should put that procedure. So it's a procedure that's been adopted previously by the Planning Commission on the agenda for that meeting. And I'd also like to say that when I talked to Joanne about the dampening effect of the cost of the sprinkler systems, she said that she hadn't heard that they were a bar to new construction. On the other hand, it seems to me that there's more and more utilization of what I'm going to call tiny homes. And that's where I think the rubber really meets the road, is when you get to the tiny homes, the construction costs could be substantially affected by the sprinkler system requirement. And in fact, several years ago, we waived the requirement for one such dwelling. But I agree completely that this is a subject that's time has come for discussion.
Anybody else? Is there anyone online? Mike, do you have anything to add?
I don't, thank you.
Could I ask a question of John?
Yeah.
What would be the circumstances that might support a waiver of that requirement?
Well, the one that I was involved with, it was a virtually a cabin on a rural lot, and it was used by the owner of the lot, or was to be used by the owner, and it was such that if a fire started, you'd have to know it immediately because of the size of the dwelling, and there were plenty of easy access exits. And so we thought that probably didn't present too much of a hazard potentially for the occupant of the house.
Thank you.
Are you asking him a question? Are you?
Yeah, so you can be heard. Yes.
Yes.
Kathy Melisick, Wilder, Vermont. One thing I would be curious about is with the proliferation of short-term rentals in especially with single-family homes, I would question the need for sprinkler systems, particularly as you have people rotating in and out, and water and septic usage being increased because of that. So that's something I would think about with the Planning Commission. Thanks.
John, you want to answer that?
I'm not sure I fully understood it well enough to answer.
Do you make it again?
Yeah, please.
It's one thing, Kathy Melisick, Wilder, Vermont. It's my issue is, or my question is, it's one thing if you're in your own home and you know your egress and you know your systems and you know where your fire extinguishers are, things like that. It's something else quite different if you are doing short-term rentals and you just have people cycling in and out of single-family homes. In the same way that like a commercial hotel requires a sprinkler system, and you are notified on your doors at the back, your back of your room's door and stuff like that to say, hey, sprinklers will kick on, here's your exit. Especially with some of the very large homes that are being utilized for many people for short-term rentals. So.
Got it?
Got it. My response to that is that I think once we get into the whole issue or situation of short-term rentals, that is a much more complicated subject than we're going to be able to address in terms of this fire procedure. So it's a good thought that Kathy has in terms of the number of things that need to be taken into account in terms of the short-term rentals. But I hope we're talking about situations that would not house more than 1 or 2 people and not just become a complete waiver of the fire safety rules. But again, that's for a hearing at a later date.
Thank you. Eric, did you have a question?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Ashley, did you have a question?
I do have a question. I also, I think it's a quick one. Just as I'm familiar, I think I have a sense of the process, but for those that don't, my question is, when somebody does want to build a single family home or even a commercial property in Hartford, do they submit their application to the department here? They come here and drop off an application.
Right.
And that's to the town staff, like Joanne would take your application. And then what's the process from there? Like, do the staff members do kind of a review before they pass it along to your commission, or does it always go straight to you guys?
No, it's really the reverse, actually. Most of those don't even come to us. You've got to have starting with the lot itself situation for us to get involved with it. If you can now automatically qualify to build a single family residence without going to the planning commission.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you, John. We all set? Okay. Thank you. All right, then the next is the H. Corey update to the select board. Pat?
Hello, I'm Pat Attilio. I live in Quechee. And this is the annual select board update. Our last annual select board update was 6 months ago, but that's neither here nor there. So that you'll find this on the page 80 of your friendly agenda packet. Comments. So first I want to acknowledge that it's been some change, the H. Corey members, and I want to acknowledge the members. I've been chair for about a year and a half, a little more, and Susan Mullins is my vice chair. Sarah Campbell is our last founding member, and Jasmine Hawkins was kind enough to join our committee. She's here tonight to replace Joe Major, who has bigger fish to fry. And Nancy Russell is still our select board liaison, and to replace Mary Erdai. Thank you for your service. We now have Miranda Dupre as our liaison. Tatum Barnes is our town staff liaison, and we have a vacancy in the student liaison position, which was a newly created position just about a year and a half ago. And we have Molly Armbruster went off to college, darn it, and we have not found a replacement for her. So our thank you all those folks for doing what you do. And so our biggest challenge right now is actually getting quorum. One, because we don't have a student liaison. We have a couple members that have been having challenges attending the meetings. And I just wanted to throw it out there that invite anyone in my earshot here that you don't have to join the committee even to show up to the meetings. I think we're doing some important things. I think we've got a fun group. Sometimes I bring cookies, and no, I encourage anybody. You don't have to, commit to a committee position, but we would love to have you in that capacity as well. And we meet the first and third Wednesdays of most months at 7 o'clock right here in Town Hall. So that's our main challenge is getting people on board. So another challenge is just, DEI is under threat right now on a nationwide basis. And to paraphrase, Susanna Davis said it about her office. And one of our missions these days is just to exist and to keep the lights on. And we're committed to doing that and to being a presence in the community. And we can use all the help we can get in these difficult times. So what has H. Corey been doing recently? Actually, the communication officer position is a done deal. Something that H. Corey pushed on for quite a long time. We're very happy to have it come to fruition, and I think JD's doing a great job. We've been working with him to get some things improved with the website, and particularly our webpage. Policy digitization is work in progress. I traded messages with John and Dylan about what, and my latest understanding is that it's ongoing through that vendor who is digitizing the ordinances.
Correct. Yes.
Expecting them something to review shortly. And Dylan thought maybe by mid-June that would be done. That's the ordinance piece. And the policies, board policy or town policies would follow after that. So one comment I would have is that we should make a bit of a splash when we get all of the ordinances online to make sure everybody in the town knows that and they're available. One of the reasons that H. Corey got involved with this, or what do we have to do with it, is because once they're online like that, it makes accessibility so much easier. Not only can just your average resident go and find an ordinance, but they can now be translated automatically. They now can be made accessible to people who are sight impaired. This triggered a thought while I was preparing for this, is that I know if you look at the meeting minutes for the select board, or you look at the meeting, the agenda packet, a lot of the components of that have been scanned as images. This works against searching through these documents after the fact. And it works against translating them and making them accessible online to vision impaired. And I dabble with artificial intelligence and AIs, and you could actually, I've done it with an earlier version of the town ordinances, using AIs to ask questions about what the ordinances have and they don't have. It's kind of interesting. But until you have the text for ordinances and the text for minutes and the text for agendas, you can't really do that kind of inquiry or usage. And there's a lot that is just scanned. So I wanted to throw that maybe to you, John, as something to consider, because I know these documents are starting as text. Somewhere along the line, they're getting turned into JPEGs, which is not useful. So I don't want to make more work for people, but that's something that occurred to me. So yeah, we're racial equity and inclusion, but we kind of reach out into other areas of equity. We're not ashamed of that.
I call it good government.
Yeah. And so there's that. We're going to shortly be talking with the special needs support person about the disability friendly certification. That's another thing that we got involved with. Kendra LaRoche came to us with that, and we thought it was a great idea. So we'll talk about that in a minute. And one of the things kind of on the drawing board for us is a gender inclusivity policy to put forward to the town. About a year ago, the school district came up with some great gender inclusivity policy for the school district, but it's kind of a different beast for what we might want to do with town staffing considerations. It seemed like a good thing to pursue, and but we're kind of starting from a blank sheet of paper. So that's a work in progress. And of course, the big thing it's underway right now is Juneteenth planning, and we're looking for something different this year. We're going to have nice weather. Yes. So, it's been a challenge in the past, but we have a whole committee going, including Jasmine and Miranda, And they're firing on all cylinders and getting a lot of things planned, including, things for kids to do and vendors and food. So appreciate their participation. And I think it's going to be a good event. On June 21st, there's a typo here,
Oh, it's 21st.
right? It's June 21st, is a Saturday. And posters are coming. And stay tuned for that. Mark your calendars, 2 to 4, Saturday, June 21st. And we've actually engaged with Lebanon DEI as well. We went to meet with them and they came to one of our meetings, and we have a person from Lebanon DEI on the Juneteenth Planning Committee. And that's, so that leads into the next final part of my 10-minute talk. One thing we're trying to do is connect with all elements of the community so we can make ourselves visible and know that let the community know that we are a resource that's there, and to find out and to raise up other groups, and so to collaborate, do things together, better together. So that includes the Special Needs Support Center, it includes Quechee Lakes DEI, John is a founding member, Lebanon DEI, Hartford Community Coalition we met with last week, and there's others. Windsor DEI is doing great things. So that's an ongoing activity for us, outreach and communication. That's about it. Open to questions.
Thank you. Pat, anybody have any questions? Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Pat. How do we know if we're doing better?
That's a good question. Now, measuring this area is tough, and we, so there's some things like digitize ordinances. You can put a check in the box, and there's, we have a strategic plan that was developed when this group was put together 6 years ago, and they gave some things. The people who put that together, the contractors we got put together, and they had some things to check and to pursue. But communication officer, did policy digitization, community safety survey. So there's some of those things we can check off the boxes. As we go forward, we need to refresh a plan, set ourselves new goals, and it's not going to be a kind of quantitative so much as setting ourselves some aspirations and accomplishment. Good weather on Juneteenth.
Thank you.
Ashley?
Oh, sure. Okay. Actually, my question was about the strategic plan. Is it true that we didn't actually adopt that as a board?
Yeah, it was adopted.
It was adopted.
It's before my time, but
okay, it was before my time too. And I was told by a member who was on HVAC at the time that we never did actually, or maybe we adopted it, but it actually hasn't been fully implemented.
Are we talking about a select board strategic plan or an HCORI?
An
This is
HCORI
HCORI.
strategic plan, yeah.
So first of all, if you go to hartfordvermont.org/HCORI, the pointer of the strategic plan is off our webpage. The select board in the day voted to support the strategic plan. But the strategic plan is a kind of a broad thing, and there's many aspects to it. And so I know there's no doubt some people could say, and I could say it, that select board hasn't gone, hasn't applied themselves to ensure that everything is completed on that strategic plan. But I take that as kind of our job as a committee to keep pressing on the items that we want to bring forth as time goes by. That's the best I can
Thank
say.
you. Yeah, and I just want to say that I welcome the press. I'm super, it's really important to me that your committee exists and all the work that you do. And if there are things that you need support from us as a board, we want to know so that we can support.
And if there is an initiative or a need you can see, we're very open to adding something into the plan. Thank you.
I had one other question, which was about the student liaison.
Yeah.
Is that meant to be a student in like grade through high school, or is that more like a college, secondary ed?
No, it's a student in either a student in a middle school and high school age that lives in Hartford or that attends a Hartford school.
Okay.
But it's middle school through high school.
I have a soon-to-be middle school daughter, so
Okay.
I'm in the network with the youth.
All right.
So
Call me.
I'll pass around some info.
No, we've been looking for over a year now.
Cool, awesome. Thank you so much.
And it was also open to, I mean, Molly was also homeschooled. I mean, she did attend some classes, but so it's not just strictly there, as Pat said. So.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks.
Anybody online, Brenda?
No, I do
And
have
you
a
had a question.
comment. Thinking about your question, Eric, of like how do we know that we're doing better? I worked on a like a DEI plan for the Vermont Conservation Districts when I was actually a grad student in Michigan. And it had a way of measuring your progress. And so just throwing that out there, I can email it to you.
Please do. Please do.
And maybe we could use the strategic, like take some things out that are not
Absolutely.
relevant, put in the strategic plan and maybe have like a way of like measuring how we're doing.
I love it. Thank you.
Thank you, Miranda. Thank you again, Pat. Brandon?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks for your report, Pat. And I just wanted to kind of visit the difference between equality and equity for those who don't have a super great grasp on it, who may be listening. There's this classic image, this cartoon where these folks stand on these boxes to look over a fence.
I know.
And it's like kind of a reductivist metaphor because the people are of different heights, and so those people are naturally shorter or taller, whereas in reality, some folks are like
all one height.
That's right. Well, some folks are in our society are disadvantaged by the systems of the society, right, or the behaviors of past generations. But regardless, the definition for our purposes can still apply, which is like inequality. Folks are given the same size box to stand on to look over this fence. And with equity, the folks who are shorter get larger boxes such that everyone can see over the fence. And so I'm just wondering, like, what in the past year or 6 months, and then looking forward into the next year, you have seen your group do or plan to do regarding equity, like as defined like this, and specifically racial equity. I know you're doing a lot of inclusion work and accessibility work, and that's amazing. But I'm just curious about racial equity in particular.
Yeah, so I can't point to any specific accomplishment. I've been, I was attending with interest the program that VIII Communities is doing. The Miranda knows very well that involves supporting potential business and homeowners of color in the Upper Valley. So if you haven't heard about that, I encourage you to look into that. It's not, and this is a bigger discussion, Brandon. Time does not permit, but we do what we can in H. Corey, given our limited charge. But to raise up things like what VIII Communities is doing and other groups like that, we also had a subcommittee trying to found a NAACP chapter that sadly did not launch. And we look for opportunities to do education and outreach without being boring. So, Juneteenth, we hope, and community events like the Hartford Block Party are ways to kind of be out, bring in everybody from different cultures. We want to infuse that with more to just raise the comfort level. That's not about equity, though. And we can take that off and talk about it more, right, if you don't want.
That sounds good. I just think of this program from Evanston, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. A few years back, they announced that their city council announced that they're going to be granting reparations to people of color, like cash money.
Right.
And so, like, these sort of like wild pie in the sky ideas, I would love for your committee to like bring them to us or through John and just like what is the maximum that the town could do, not just your committee, because we could, if we got ideas from your committee, maybe we could run with them. We have the ability to help you guys out.
Sure. I understand where you're coming from. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
All right.
We have a comment online.
Okay.
Oh,
Michelle, go ahead.
Hey guys, it's Michelle from White River Junction, Vermont, and I was one of the original members on Hickory as well. And I just want to say it's not about checking off the boxes. And it kind of it's a little upsetting to hear that. I love you, Pat, by the way. And I think you're awesome. And we've met a lot behind the scenes, not just in Hickory, but in the Equity Caucus for the state of Vermont and the White Affinity Group. But just have to remember, this isn't about checking off the boxes. This work is really important. It needs to be done with purpose, not just to say, oh, I did it. And I would suggest to every board member, go back and take a look at the charge of the committee. And then take a look at I'm gonna keep talking for a minute, so please don't cut me off. Please take a look at the strategic plan. And I just have to say that one of the things that I felt was like checking off the box was hiring the firm out of Massachusetts who had no connection to our town and didn't know anyone to do a safety study when we had somebody who had put together the strategic plan, who is a Vermonter who has done this work in the state of Vermont for years and years and years. And we could have supported him as a man of color to do this work. And instead we chose to check the box off and just pick this firm. And I found I was part of that process, and I wasn't very pleased with the outcome and the way it was facilitated. So I just want to share that. I'm just going to be honest, and I think there's a lot more work for the select board to do. I'm psyched that there's a new group of board members who are interested in this. And again, I please ask you to look at the strategic plan. Is again, like Patrick said, one of the reasons for having policies is to make and having them online. And this has been going on since the start of Hickory to get those policies online. And then the second step was to look at them through a lens of equity, which is something Hickory was going to do. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you for letting me share, and I'm done.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yes, I should emphasize the first reason why we pushed for digitization of policies, to bring them all in one place so that we could review them from an equity lens. That was so it's several steps removed. That was the genesis of it.
Can I ask a last question, which is more of just where can I find the strategic plan for H. Corey? I'm on the webpage. And I see school district resources. Oh, there, I found it. Sorry.
It's not a big page.
No, I skimmed over it 3 times. So
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Pat.
Alrighty.
Okay, so let's move on then to consider adopting resolution naming Hartford a disability-friendly town.
Yes, Mary, I think you knew about this pretty early on and then followed up with Kendra LaRoche, and I think her colleague is here tonight with Brandon at her side to talk about this notion of the select board adopting a resolution
Right.
entitled Disability Friendly Town.
Yes.
So maybe they'd like to address the board
Sure.
or whoever, yes. Sorry, I didn't know you were involved with that group.
Yeah, sorry. Hi, good evening, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name's Cody Dana. I am unfortunately not Kendra LaRoche tonight. I'm sorry.
We are.
I am on the board of directors for the SNSC. And I'm here to express our strong support for the resolution declaring Hartford a disability-friendly town. This is more than a resolution. It's a vision for a Hartford where every resident, regardless of ability, can participate fully, contribute meaningfully, and feel a true sense of belonging. We do commend the select board for recognizing that Hartford's strength lies in the diversity of its people, and that to thrive as a community, we must ensure that no one is left in the margins. Disability inclusion is not just about compliance with the law, it's about leadership. And with this resolution, Hartford has the opportunity to lead. Imagine what this could look like. A downtown where local businesses display their certified disability-friendly designation proudly at their windows. A town hall where events are not only physically accessible, but where everyone feels welcome because invitations clearly offer accommodations. A community where employment practices invite people of all abilities to apply, contribute, and grow. The value this brings to Hartford is immense. It creates economic opportunity because accessible businesses welcome more customers. It enhances community vitality because everyone, from children to elders, can engage in town life. And it affirms Hartford's commitment to equity, not just as an idea, but as an action. At the Special Needs Support Center, we work every day with individuals and families navigating a world that is too often designed without them in mind. This resolution tells them, you matter, you belong here, and we're going to do better, not because we have to, but because it's the right thing to do. We urge you to adopt this resolution and take these important first steps. Let Hartford be known as a place where inclusion is not an afterthought, but a foundation. Thank you.
People have some questions?
Yes, my first one would be, what sort of obligations come with this resolution? What would the town be expected to do that maybe it is not doing now?
Yeah, it's a good question. Lebanon passed a similar resolution in February. Kendra has been working with their ADA coordinator, David Brooks. She's happy to lend her expertise to Hartford's ADA coordinator as well. She's certified in ADA compliance for title, this section of the ADA that applies, local government cities. She's leading Lebanon through an ADA review self-evaluation. She's offering free training for city employees and helping them to ensure that they're following ADA law, setting them up for protection against potential lawsuits. So this assistance is, it's not required by passing this resolution, but just kind of, recognizing that, Hartford is committed to improving and the assistance of the Special Needs Support Center is here, if needed.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on that and clarify, so if we pass the resolution, then there's an offer of support from Kendra and your organization to help us be accountable to the resolution?
Correct.
And question for John, do we have an ADA coordinator?
That's a very good question. I'm not aware of it, if there is one.
Perhaps another thing we think about.
Yes, maybe that's job 1A.
I have a question that a former select board member would ask. What is this going to cost us?
Yeah, good question. We'd be happy to work with, whoever you guys want to appoint as the, ADA coordinator to evaluate any work that might need to be done. If it has a cost, Kendra has volunteered her time as a grant writer to help the town with anything that might be needed. She's quite prolific at grant writing. So that was certainly something that was offered. Other than that, you know, our goal would be for it to not have to cost any additional funds from the community. So
I would say the good news is that this building was rehabbed in the last decade, and I would think that there would have been some lens of disability friendliness to the physical building anyway, and that's probably good news. But yes, I appreciate what you've said there.
Yeah, because obviously people, you know, if, you know, reading this, it's accommodations language on public signage. That is something that would obviously, you know, cost us something unless there was some grant for, you know, signage and things like that. So.
great question.
Miranda?
Go ahead, Mike. Mike's able to-
Oh, great, good. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, thanks. Hold on, let me just, I want to look at the language. So, I mean, you know, I get what this is about and I'm supportive of it. I noticed sections 1, 2, and 3 use the verb, the town encourages local business, encourages, you know, this and that. Section 4, it says the town select board commits the town to conducting internal checks and creating improvement plans that will be implemented over time. That includes deployment practices, talent recruitment, and retention policies. And I just wanted to know if John had an opinion on where that line is between his ability to manage staff, including retaining staff, and the select board, you know, generally leaving that area up to your discretion. And that's it. Thanks.
That's appreciated, but certainly, yes, I would leave this meeting understanding that I would need to communicate with people with those responsibilities and talk to them about implementing this rather than the select board advising them to do so. Yeah, I understand my role now.
Okay, anybody? Garrett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I certainly appreciate the questions about the commitment and so forth. And I was wondering, is it Cody?
That's right.
Thank you. I was wondering if, from your perspective, obviously there's plenty of low hanging fruit. And the first thing that I thought of was, well, this agenda doesn't include accommodations language. And that seems like, you know, it seems like there's things like that we don't often think of, but we could use help with that aren't, you know, shouldn't cost us at least to implement. And then the question is, how might that, putting that language on there and someone can ask for assistance, then what might some of the scenarios be in the from your background and perspective? Can you anticipate some scenarios that the town would want to understand?
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing is, like, you know, how would that process look as far as you know, adopting some of these accommodations or language?
Well, if we put accommodations language, let's say, just on the agenda, which is, you know, a public facing thing that we do, and I don't think there's such language on there right now. What are we signing up for potentially, I guess? What are, you know, how might we need to assist people if we're saying, hey, ask us for help if you need it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And like, I think a lot of it, you know, you guys are kind of I mean, you have the, you know, everything's available online. You know, you're doing a lot of the right things, and, you know, things where you need accommodations. It's like Pat was just saying, like, hey, like, this should be a word searchable text. It shouldn't be a JPEG. It makes it easier for people to find if you wanted to pass it through, you know, someone who has, you know, visual impairment or, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, there's certain things like that, like you said, could be potentially low-hanging fruit that could be done. But yeah, I mean, when we're talking about making these changes to make it more equitable, we're not just talking about, you know, any one thing in particular. We work with people who are across the whole disability spectrum, whether it be, you know, autism or someone with visual impairment or some, you know, etc. So yeah, that's a great question. I think that's part of what Kendra does with a lot of organizations in the area, is walking them through. She'll go through someone's whole building and looking at all their processes and create like a whole plan of, okay, this is what we can do to help make things more accommodating for people who are differently abled. So yeah, it's a great question.
Anybody else online?
I think, Brian, you had your hand up. Did you want to make a comment?
Good evening. I just wanted to mention that, we do that for sidewalks and roadways anyway. For our major infrastructure project, ADA requirements have been almost over 3 decades now that, and also for buildings. So, I mean, the federal statutes are in place, which, we have to go by when we design or take a look at roadways or sidewalks. I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you, Brian. Are you looking for a motion to, for the Hartford?
Kathy has a comment.
Okay, Kathy.
Sure.
Kathy Milsick, Wilder, Vermont. Who was that last person?
Brian Gosda.
Thank
at
you.
DPW.
I used to work for a disability rights and service organization for years in Baltimore. And like Brian was saying, this is actually, the ADA is law, and it has been really? And it has been law for 34 years. Semi-related to this, I know the school system operates separate from the town as far as budgets and staffing go. This was the second year in a row that we had a candidates night where someone who uses a wheelchair and walker couldn't be on the stage if they needed to. And that was brought up at the last meeting, and it was not changed for this one. The school in other ways though does these amazing programs, and I was one of the people who voted for the bond for the Wilder School to be renovated. It's a historic building. It came from Charles Wilder. And it's where the Regional Alternative Program serves not just Hartford, but all the communities in this area. The selfish bonus on top of how good that is that all those people from outside Hartford, all those students are tuition paid to go to that school. So our excellence in combining that now with the autism program there is pretty amazing. So 34 years, it's like we need to get going. And I know you have the Bugbee Center on the agenda today, so you all know where that is. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. So are we looking for a motion?
You've got a motion to adopt the resolution, I
Right,
think.
right. Okay. So is there someone who's prepared to,
Do we need to, will we read the entire resolution as part of the
It's been the tradition, I
I
think.
usually read it after we,
If we pass
if we pass it.
and the chair reads it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, so.
And then there's signatures over here on the original document.
Right.
well, I'll make a motion.
All right, thank you.
You'll have it.
Thank you, Ashley, absolutely.
I move that the select board adopt a resolution naming Hartford a disability-friendly town.
And do we have a second for that? Second. Miranda, okay, we have a second from Miranda and moved by Ashley. So we will do the roll call vote again. So let's start with Mike, if you're still there.
Aye.
Right, Eric?
Aye.
Aye.
Ida?
Aye.
Brandon?
Aye.
Ashley?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So that's a unanimous vote. So I will go ahead and read the resolution on Hartford as a disability-friendly town. Whereas the Hartford Town Select Board recognizes that for the town of Hartford to truly thrive, every community member must be able to fully and meaningfully participate in every aspect of public life, from civic to economic to recreational. And whereas the Hartford Town Select Board recognizes that proactively working to remove barriers to full and meaningful participation for disabled members of the community is of vital importance to achieving that goal. Now therefore be it resolved that the Hartford Town Select Board commits to pursue the following preliminary disability inclusion actions, which will take the town of Hartford beyond the minimum legal ADA requirements. Section 1, the Hartford Town Select Board encourages local businesses and organizations to become certified disability friendly to create a community of belonging for all. And Section 2, the Hartford Town Select Board encourages the town to adopt best practices that will help it to serve as a model for disability inclusion in the business sector. And Section 3, the Hartford Town Select Board encourages the town to strive for inclusive and accessible spaces and events, including accommodations language on public signage, accommodation language on invitations and registrations for all events hosted and sponsored by the town, request for accommodations language to be used on invitations and registrations for events the town speaks at and or co-sponsors. And section 4, the Hartford Town Select Board commits the town to conducting internal checks and creating improvement plans that will be implemented over time to ensure accessibility and disability inclusion in employment practices encompassing but not limited to accommodations, talent recruitment and retention policies, facilities promoting universal design whenever possible, and websites promoting accessibility whenever possible, dated this 13th day of May, 2025 at Hartford, Vermont. All right. Thank you, Cody, for that.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks very much.
So we then will move on to review bids on new water division truck and award contract.
Brian is in the ether to talk with us remotely tonight.
Okay, go ahead, Brian, whenever you're ready.
Good evening. In front of you, yes, is our request. We did a sealed bid process for a new 3/4 ton pickup truck for the water division that was approved within both of the 50 and the 55 fund budgets. As I laid out in my memo to you, like I said, we went through the process, and it's just replacing a HD 250 truck. Yeah, we've had some issues with the Chevy trucks in regards to fuel and whatnot, and they just haven't been, even though it's only a 2016 truck, they don't really haven't been running that well for us. So this is a replacement truck. It's a service truck. It'll be utilized for meter reads, responding to complaints. Somebody wants us to take a look at something going on in their house. It does have a snow plow on it because the water division does assist the highway division in plowing roads. Well, not so much roads, but the intersections and whatnot. And they have to be able to get to the different pump stations and whatnot that they have to service. So that's basically it in a nutshell.
Thank you, Brian. Does anybody have any questions for Brian? Brandon?
Well, it's not so much a question for Brian as for John. I didn't see specifically what will happen to the appropriations that are not used up by this purchase. Looks like to be in the neighborhood of 20 grand.
Yeah, and these are both enterprise funds, Hartford Water, Quechee Water. It's being split between those two funds. So that money remains in the enterprise funds from which you're making the purchase. Is that right, Brian?
Yes, that is correct.
So there'd be no transfer to the general fund. It would stay where the ratepayers have put that money.
Correct.
Thank you.
Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quick question, Brian. The bid number 1, the bid info sheet, the trade-in information. I was just curious. There's a with and without plow trade-in, and it looks like the trade-in without the plow gets us more money. Did I understand that right?
Are you speaking?
Page 102 of the packet.
Oh,
if you're.
Yeah, I don't. Which one is it from, Eric? Is it from Formula One or is it the one from Boston Spa? From
Michael somebody. Yes, Formula Ford. It's basically, it says the trade-in is 17,000 and then trade-in without the plow is 20,000.
Yeah.
Possibly those numbers are just in the wrong places, or do they really not want the plow that much?
Yeah, it's in the bid info sheet from the Ford folks.
Okay. I know that we're getting 20,000 in trade-in, so I just have to do 17. Yeah, they're giving us more money without the plow. So Jeremy confirmed that because we were surprised, and what they are giving us is 20,000 without the plow.
Okay, thank you. I guess now you can sell the plow separately.
Or scrap it.
And I'll also confirm that you're right. They may not be in the wrong areas, but I know, Jeremy, we were surprised at that trade-in value. So he did call and double check with that, but I can double confirm that that's what that's what the intent is. And I will get back with John on that.
Yeah, thank you. It did occur to me that I know you're moving from an 8-foot plow roughly to a 9.5-foot plow, but when I saw those numbers, I thought, well, I wonder if it's less expensive just not to get the plow and use the existing one, but I just.
Yeah, Eric, the bigger difference is we're going to a V plow, which is huge. I can speak for myself. I have one. I have the 8.5-foot Fisher plow, and it makes a world of difference in how fast you can move snow and get it out of the way than just using a straight plow.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Anybody online? Okay.
I wonder, do you think, Brian, it makes sense for a motion to award the contract to the low bidder, but maybe with a not to exceed price to factor in the $3,000 difference so that you don't have to come back if they say they've transposed the numbers in the wrong locations?
John, Jeremy called and he double checked with that, and the trade in is at $20,000, would be the $20,000.
Okay.
So whether they meant to be you would assume you're right with the plow, but that's what we would just double check, whether we're going to keep the plow or not keep the plow.
Okay.
All right. So I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Mike.
All right. It's nice to get in the meeting a little, you know. I move that the select board accept the bid in the amount of $50,148 from Formula Ford Lincoln, Rutland, Vermont, for a 2025 Ford F250 4x4 Super Duty Super Cab with plow, and authorize the town manager to sign all documents associated with the purchase of the vehicle.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second? Eric?
I'll second that.
All right. The motion has been made by Mike Hoyt and seconded by Eric Kraus. We'll do the roll call vote. I'll start this time with Ashley.
Aye.
Brandon?
Aye.
Ida?
Aye.
Miranda?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And I will vote aye. So that is 7-0. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Mike. And we will move on to discuss the town hall HVAC and proposed purchasing policy exceptions. Hi, Dina.
Hello. So as you all saw in the select board agenda, the second and third floor heating system is currently down. The Alliance came out a couple weeks ago and said that there was basically scorch marks on one of the motherboards on the outside unit, and that the current cost to replace that and do some work inside. We do have a head unit in the town manager's office that had a crack in it and was leaking coolant. That also needs to be replaced. So the total price for replacement that we got is it's in the memo, but it's $22,000 and change. What I'm asking for is for a waiver that will allow John to sign a contract without soliciting multiple RFPs, partly because we have an LG system. There's only 3 of those in the Upper Valley that I'm aware of. There is no company that really trains in them. Alliance has become familiar with our system.
That's for sure.
And also, I just, as a general rule, don't like to have multiple contractors touching a single piece of equipment because I want to know who you yell at. So that's kind of the broad overview of stuff, but I'm happy to answer any questions and go into any details.
I think Dana will quickly agree that we've gotten to know Alliance very well, and they've learned a lot about our system, and it's been an expensive education.
It's been an expensive education, and also as stated in the agenda or in the memo, we are looking to replace the system in the next year or so, year and a half.
Do people have questions for Dana? Ashley, I saw your hand first.
I was just wondering who installed the system.
VHV. It was done in 2015.
As part of the rehab.
As part of the rehab of the building. I don't necessarily know that I don't want to put it all on them, we were really an early adopter. You will all hear me say often that my goal is to make Hartford #2, because I want the #1 guy to be the kind of person that deals with all these, early adopter issues. Over the past couple of years, what we've learned is during the install, they did not blow out the copper shavings of the piping that is in the middle. Those copper shavings over the past decade have worked their way into valves, causing leaks, things of that issue. Last 2 years, I've had issues with boards burning out, which is something that is rarely ever seen in these units. And the philosophy that the going idea is that the boards are going, shut that valve, and the gunk is just involved in there, and the valve can't shut, and it'll just sit there and shut the valve, shut the valve, shut the valve, and then it'll die.
Yeah.
So I mean, 10 years ago, folks were probably watching YouTube videos trying to figure out how to install these systems. But as we know, they've become, a lot more prevalent in the last 10 years, and people have a lot more experience with them. So I don't have any concerns about going forward with heat pumps, but I think we're just really suffering with being an early adopter.
Yeah, the reason I asked, and I guess my follow-up to that is, does VHV know about the issues that we've been having, and have they been I guess I'm wondering if they were the folks to do work to fix it, would they be willing to do that at a discount? Like, was there a warranty? Yeah.
This is all beyond warranty. They continued to work with the town until I believe it was 2019, when they tried to then install the virtual control system.
Okay.
And then there became issues, and that's when the town broke from them.
Okay.
And looked for alternatives, and then I came in 2021, and we continued to work with Alliance.
Thank you.
Eric, did you have a question?
I did. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few questions. Sure. So if I understand it correctly, the roughly $22,000 is to replace the compressor that serves the second and third floors? And a board. And a ducted air handler. A ducted air handler, that is in the town manager's office. And then the compressor and the board that burned out are outside on the northeast end of the building. Okay. When did that system fail? When did the system fail? When did we lose the capacity or the capability to heat and cool the second and third floors? It was just before, it was like the Thursday before the last select board meeting. So we didn't have time to get it on the agenda. And then, we were willing to wait, given that we had the cooler weather break in it. Moving forward, would you, beyond this repair, into the bigger picture of replacing system? You said roughly 480,000, I think, if I remember the numbers, somewhere in that ballpark. For equipment that does not include install, carpentry, and the associated cost. So are you envisioning a similar configuration or architecture where you have a shared control system and then you have separate systems for the two different floors? Is that the idea, or might different equipment suppliers configure it differently? It could be configured differently. I think one of the things I really want to explore with the next system is having more air handlers. So just to be clear, probably 80% of the building have a head like we have here, where the air comes up into it, blows down directly. In the town manager's office, and this floor for the bathrooms, upstairs, and then for the second and third floor for the bathrooms, we have an air handler system, meaning that you have a return in the hallway, which pulls the air in, it gets conditioned, and then it goes through ductwork and gets dispersed there. The reason why I want to consider more of those systems is because we don't have a backup heat system in town hall. And there has been an issue before where heat goes down. If you have an air handling system, there's a possibility to put electric resistance wires in that ductwork, which would allow it to have a secondary heat source. And then there's other things going on now, like the 410A refrigerant that is in our current system. Manufacturers are no longer allowed to produce those systems because the refrigerant has such a potent greenhouse gas effect. So there's a new systems coming online. I was looking at systems the other day that I really like, where I think it was a train system, Mitsubishi Train, same company, they're different names. Now have a system where there's a coolant outside that then transfers the heat into water, and water piping is running through the building. So you don't have to worry about like a toxicity or any kind of outcomes if those pipes are to break. It becomes a water leak rather than a refrigerant leak. I guess where I was going with that line of questioning is struggling with the idea that we continue to invest in a system that's dying or practically dead, including another, if we're spending on the order of 30 grand a year for repairs. So maybe this 22 is just small pocket change, but basically what I was trying to understand was, does it make more sense to try to invest in, if the system can be very modular, does it make more sense to try to invest, even if it's more than 20 grand or 22 grand, in components that will serve the building in the longer term, rather than things, because my impression was these will serve the building for about a year and a half or so, or maybe 2 years tops, and then be torn out, and I don't know what will happen with them. But these short-term fixes are, it may be the only way forward, but it seems undesirable. It's correct. There's no good choices here. The issue being, though, is I don't know that any thing that would attach to the current system would then be compatible with the next generation that we would be installing, which is going to have a different refrigerant and different components. We have been lucky in that LG systems are one of the few systems that create compatible components with parts that are more than 3 years old. This came up a couple of years ago with a different condenser issue, where most of the other manufacturers, they're just, after 3 years, they're just not compatible. Okay, thank you.
Parts has become an issue. Service technicians have become an issue. Yes, the toxic fog is a concern. And yet at the same time, we don't want to go to a fossil fuel building. That's again, definitely against what we stand for. So you're talking about a different system that's maybe more reliable and has the ability to be repaired much quicker if there's problems that arise. Yes, I mean, just to give you an idea of that is these systems, I think it might be in the memo, there's no distributor in the area. So anytime they order parts, they're coming up from down south. One of the things we got to wait for now is for somebody from LG to come over and commission the system. The closest guy to do that is in Buffalo, New York. So it's an expensive lesson, as you mentioned, but it's a good lesson. I think we've learned a lot.
That's good.
Patrick?
Who spec'd the system? Wait, can I venture a guess? Did Efficiency Vermont spec the system in 2015?
Well, this is a bread loaf rehab project, right? And they had lots of subcontractors with various portions of the build, correct? Correct. And then also there were committees involved, and I'm not always a big fan of building by committee. Good times.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of incorporating energy efficiency into our town buildings, and I think it's important. But I also, Vermont has been on the bleeding edge of high efficiency construction, and a lot of businesses and municipalities are paying a high cost for that. And it's a tough thing because, it's being promoted and being, sold to municipalities and homeowners, and with all the best intentions, but then, yeah, we're picking up the cost, and it's just tough to kind of look back and say,
Yeah, and I've got real concerns constantly about, as we move into more efficient buildings, not creating sick buildings. I mean, for those of you that were here, when I started in 2021, Mary, you might have been the only one here that was here, but the stairwell over in back,
Mike,
yeah. The stairwell back behind you would just get really, the mildew smell would knock your socks off. And I went down to the basement one day, and somebody, probably well-intentioned, had put polyiso foam board over all the vents, so the basement wasn't breathing. At the time, I didn't even have a ladder here, so DPW had to bring a ladder and went down and just ripped it all out. But I mean, we were probably a year and a half, 2 years away from that being possibly black mold and all that comes with that.
So when you talk about an unhealthy building, you talk about an unhappy staff. And as they have been very flexible and good team players, that will come to an end, I'm sure, at some point, especially as the weather gets warmer, if the situation hasn't been resolved, at least with the next Band-Aid, and then certainly as it becomes colder. So not only are we working on this short-term fix and then the evaluation of a long-term solution, but in the interim, I've asked Dana to put together some sort of contingency plan for various parts of the building that need to relocate if their conditions are simply unacceptably uncomfortable or unhealthy. So,
And they do let me know how they feel.
they do.
Can I ask the last follow-up to that? That
Why
one
don't we have Brandon?
Oh, well, thanks. Speaking to the healthy buildings situation, I was just wondering, there's heat and cooling and then there's ventilation, and these two systems are separate. And I'm wondering if we have tested the ventilation at each of its outlets.
It's not been tested to my knowledge, but it is an operational system as far as we know. And there have been a handful of times when it is clicked off. And we typically know within a day or two, because there will be areas of the building that, it just gets dank.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'd be keen to hear, I think in this process, as you evaluate the heating and cooling, you might also evaluate the ventilation to make sure it's up to snuff.
Yeah. I mean, I did just get a flow hood and a manometer so I could actually do that.
Cool. And just what would a warranty be like for a fully new system?
I think I'd have to check into that, to be honest with you. I think it depends on the installer, what certifications they have, and what relationship they have with the vendors. But I can look into that.
I would encourage us to have one, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, and also making sure, I'm a big fan of bringing in a third party person to commission the system, oversee it. I think we found that doing that would be worth it. So I'm going to, include those costs and push for those costs when the system's replaced.
Okay. And Ashley, you had another question?
Yeah, I just, I hate to give you a hard time, Dana, because I know you're dealing with like all of this stuff. We don't have a facilities maintenance person. I know this is falling into your lap, so I hate to ask you these questions, but I'm wondering, have you looked into if there's any grant funding in the ether for this kind of scenario? And or how you feel about the idea of reaching out to VHV about the copper shavings in the install. That feels like I'm thinking for my personal home, even if it was 10 years later and I found out this kind of like negligent installation issue, you can bet that I would be like let me talk to the manager. So I'm just giving a little bit of that essence to the town.
I did get some recent history from Hunter Reesberg, who was the town manager at the time. And the information I gave to Dana in terms of what entities were involved, you already knew through your own research.
Yeah, and they've been here. Redlift has been here. I've spoken to VHV. The one hope is here is when the condenser died outside, I was able to get VLC to accept that as an insurance claim. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to do that again. I'll at least put it through and see what they say.
So how would that apply to this cost? We would pay it out, but then we would make a claim and hopefully be reimbursed.
I believe for the condenser, it was around 60 grand and they covered all but a $1,000 deductible.
Okay, that is helpful information. Yeah. It's not guaranteed.
Not guaranteed, but we'll go for it.
And then as far as grants, to that point, I know it's unlikely.
Yeah, I mean, we can look. I've not seen anything like that available. For covering these costs right now, where we're at is we were setting $50,000 aside for replacement. So I'm also dipping into that to cover these repair costs.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. Any other questions, or is there somebody online, Miranda? Okay, I'll entertain the recommended motion. Brandon?
I move that the board waive the purchasing policy requirement for multiple bids on goods and services with a total price over $20,001. And approve the town manager to execute the contract with Alliance Mechanical to fix a condenser serving the second and third floor for $22,433.
Okay, thank you, Brandon. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Ida, thank you for that. And we'll do the roll call vote. And Mike, if you're still there, I'll start with you.
Aye.
Okay, Ashley?
Aye.
Brandon?
Aye.
Ida?
Aye.
Miranda?
Aye.
And Eric?
Hi.
And I vote aye. So that's seven.
And you should know that in anticipation of a successful vote, Alliance will be here, is actually here today. Will continue to be here the next few days. And we're waiting on a part for the final fix in a couple of weeks' time.
Yep, yes, and they've got the gentleman scheduled to commission the system on the 28th.
Great.
Awesome. Thanks,
Okay,
Dana.
Thank you,
you.
Dana.
Thanks, Dana.
Okay, I think this might be a good time. I hope you don't mind. Probably be a good time for us to take a 5-minute break so we can go to the bathroom, get something to drink, go from there. Thank you. So we should be back. It's about 7:47. We should be back in about 7 minutes, if that's possible. Okay, and for select board members, remember to flag Okay, we are back at 4 minutes to 8. And so the next item of business is the review and approve Bugbee Senior Center Memorandum of Agreement, and that is Mark.
Yes, welcome to the John and Mark Show. We've been in close collaboration recently on some matters, and 2 of them are on the agenda for tonight. The first is the motion to possibly renew our memorandum of agreement with the White River Council on Aging. As I pointed out in my memo, our current MOA runs through June 30th. So if the select board wants to continue the relationship pretty much on a status quo basis, it would be a good time to think about signing off on a new MOA, which I've drafted, basically tracking the old MOA with updates on the rental figure, and also some language at the very end pointing out that we as partners in good faith would work together if there's construction to be had at the Bugbee building to renegotiate terms as may be necessary in the future.
Okay, great. Board have any questions?
This sound about right, Mark?
Yeah, it sounds about right.
Brendan?
Thank you. I just wanted to, thank Mark for everything he does, and also kind of ask John whether it's your intention that we work with Mark and his organization for any further design work on what could possibly happen with that building or that site.
Yeah, stay tuned for the very next item on the agenda, because that will be the next request. The board, just to jump ahead, the board had received a feasibility study commissioned with the ARPA funding to evaluate what the future renovation possibilities there were for that town building, which has served for many years as the Bugbee Senior Center. We'd like it to continue in that same function, but we'd like to have the town get behind a plan of action to renovate that building so that it's brought up to code and is a more comfortable, safe, and efficient space over time. This MOA really just talks about what happens between the town and the Council of Aging now with respect to the use and the rights and responsibilities of the parties. And the next item we can discuss as to how the board might want to review the feasibility study that the town has commissioned for future renovations.
Okay. Anything else? I'll entertain a motion then.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Eric?
Thank you. I move that the select board accept the terms of the draft MOA and that the town manager be authorized to sign the MOA on behalf of the town.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, a second from Brandon. And I will check to see if Mike is still on. We'd start with you, Mike, if you are.
I vote aye.
Okay, Eric?
Aye.
Miranda?
Aye.
Ida?
Aye.
Brandon?
Aye.
Ashley?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So that is 7-0. Thank you. The motion passes. We have the terms of the draft MOA now to be signed on behalf of the town. So then we'll move on to this next matter of business.
Yes, I remember when the feasibility study was presented by Studio Nexus with a lot of Bugbee friendly participants in the audience and with a lot of interest on the board's part. There was discussion of having a committee set up, an ad hoc committee of a limited time duration to review, kick the tires, question, discuss, debate which of the several options proposed by the architects would be the best for the future of that building and the important programming that takes place there day in and day out. So with that in mind, Mark and I met and talked about who would be, logical, helpful stakeholders to participate in a series of discussions, ultimately with the goal of presenting recommendations to the select board. And so this is a list by functionality or by position for the board's consideration. It's not in stone. These are just proposals as to who we think, or the kinds of people we think might be very helpful if they can be recruited to serve.
Do we have any discussion questions for John or Mark? Brandon?
Thank you. This sounds like a wonderful idea. I'm curious what kinds of recommendations such a committee would present to the board.
I'll take a first stab, but Mark can jump in. Studio Nexus, if you've had a chance, and if you haven't, I recommend it to your reading, generated what they call a feasibility study for the building. And it laid out, I think they call them options 1, 2, 3, and 4, but there's actually 7 or 8 because there's subparts within some of those. And the way they left it was that in order to move forward, the town should make some decisions in concert with our friends at the Council of Aging as to which of these options seem most appealing, and then let the select board know how the committee feels about the various options, which ones they might recommend to act on.
Do I have any other discussion questions, Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is a good course of action. I think it makes sense. It essentially offloads some work from the board, and I appreciate that somewhere in the packet here, I read that, one of the objectives of the ad hoc committee is to solicit input from the public and so forth. That being said, looking at the constitution of the committee that's been proposed, to me, it feels a bit town and staff heavy and a bit light on members of the public at large. And so, and I also, the other factor that caught my attention was there's the potential. I know some of the staff members live in Hartford, some do not. And then there's positions here which will may be Hartford residents, they may not. And so when we look at it from a residency perspective, potentially we have a fair amount of committee members that are not residents of Hartford. And I assume that whatever recommendation comes before the board will be, I think the options that were outlined in the study were somewhere between 1 million and roughly 800,000 or somewhere in that ballpark to several $1 million. And that, I don't know if that's shared among other towns or if that the expectation is the Hartford taxpayers would be footing that bill. That said, I guess what I'm getting at is I wonder if we could look at increasing the number of, or stipulating that the majority of the voting members of the committee are Hartford residents. And these are all just proposals. And if you have concerns or whatever, other board members don't want to go this direction, I totally understand. But voting members, the majority voting members are residents of Hartford. And that some of the staff positions will bring an enormous amount of value to the process. But I wonder if we could entertain the idea of substituting 2 perhaps of those positions and bringing in other members of the Hartford public. I think I'll leave it there and see if there's more discussion on that counter proposal.
Brandon?
Thank you. And thanks, Eric, for those ideas. I might throw in another idea to add to the mix, which is that I'd like to see a kind of a clause in here that says that the options presented to us, A, B, C, D, and their variations are not the strict options that this group has to choose from. In other words, that this committee could do some more expansive brainstorming and also include those ideas. I just would hate to see them limited by these 4+ options that the architects created, just as because that was always intended to be just a first step, I think. And we don't want to use them for more than just that first step.
Yeah, I can chime in a little bit. So it's I've had to remind myself several times when looking at the report for the feasibility study that we're not at the design phase yet. That these are, in one case, one of the options presented was actually a schematic that does not, would not be a building. So a lot of the purpose of the architectural feasibility study was to understand the scope of investment and construction and renovation required to meet both present program needs and also program needs for the future as the building starts to come towards the end of its planned life. So it's going to be one of those four options, and it would probably be more like we think we can do a small renovation, a medium renovation, or a big renovation. And then the recommendations from the feasibility study can then move into the design phase. And then if that's successful, then it goes from the design phase into construction and permitting.
I have a question for you, Mark.
Yeah.
What do you see as a timeline for this?
I think that's up to us.
I think so too. The question really is, how quickly does the community want to come to a decision so they can go to next steps, as Mark has just laid out? It's May 13th now. I thought to myself, well, if this group is meeting maybe a couple of times a month, maybe by year end was feasible. I know there was some interest in the select board to have it be a time limited thing with a real focus on doing the work so that folks could be solicited to participate, knowing that there would be an end date.
Right. Okay. Brandon?
It would seem to me that the most, if this is going to involve some kind of budget commitment, that it would be really great to finalize it just around the start of when we start budgeting for the next year. So that's what's late fall, early winter.
Yeah, that does kind of kick us into October, November.
Right. Right.
But the budget is not finalized until January.
Mm-hmm. And this is an ad hoc committee. They wouldn't be paid, right?
That's correct. That's what we've done with other
Right.
short-term
Right. Just wanna make that-
committees. Yeah.
Okay, so,
You do have a question on your left there, Mary.
oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, no. Yeah, I just was wondering, I would love to hear your thoughts, Mark, on what Eric was suggesting of staff, a couple staff roles, maybe not being voting committee members, but perhaps moving them to a more like consulting role. I would also be interested to see, like, there's one frequent Bugbee user as part of the committee, maybe your thoughts on maybe increasing that to 2. So there's just a couple perspectives of people that are active users of the building. Yeah, just curious your input.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question, and it is aligned with our values at the White River Council on Aging. Everything we do tends to be collaborative, involves a lot of stakeholder input. I think for the purpose of this committee, which is largely technical, that we may. I like what John has proposed here, because this is a very focused charge for the committee. So the work has already been done both through the feasibility study and through the Council on Aging's strategic plan, which will be approved next month, that incorporates a massive amount of stakeholder engagement. That's not to say we couldn't include more, but I would want to be sure that this committee sort of stays on task, that we're really looking at which direction to go to with the design phase of the building's revitalization. But we're open to anything, as always. So,
do you have any idea, Mark, about how you would go about choosing, or would it be you, the chair of this group, of this ad hoc committee? I mean, I'm just curious how you do that, because otherwise it's kind of, you come together and then nobody kind of knows where we're going.
You mean how we would recruit? Or,
Yeah, both, how you would recruit and how you would assign positions, if there are positions. And, you know, which ones would be either voting or not voting, et cetera, or are they all voting?
mhm.
I suppose we could deal with some of that in the charge. You've just seen a very basic rudimentary one that I plagiarized from the 250th committee.
Okay.
So that's just bare bones structure
Okay.
around which we can adapt and modify.
Okay.
But in terms of recruiting customers of Bugbee or stakeholders on the board of Bugbee, who you think might be ideal for the committee. I have got some certain ideas as to who might fill out some of these others. But the purpose for tonight was basically to see if you were agreeable with the concept of setting up a committee. Then our expectation would be that Mark and I would work together parallel and overlapping to generate some actual names on a slate of people that might have some of these attributes and be appointed. Yes, I take very seriously what you've said to do about residency. I think that's an important thing. And I think Brandon has a very good point that the charge could be broadened, not just pick one of these like some kind of a game. Which of these 7 do you want to go with, but as a starting point for recommendations to be made. So I think I take that as a very good suggestion as well.
Yeah, and I do want to also highlight the amount of collective experience and wisdom among the Bugbee community. So I would imagine there are, you know, if we look at, for example, a member of the board of the Council on Aging, a frequent user, someone in building trades, someone with a legal or finance background, many of those people may play dual roles, both as direct stakeholders of the facility who are using programs and services there, and who also happen to have a background that can really help inform and guide the decision-making process.
Is there anybody on?
Mike.
Go ahead, Mike.
Thanks. So I think this is a great idea. I mean, this is really helpful, particularly for a select board that doesn't meet enough or necessarily have the experience to vet like all the options. So I think it does us a great service to keep our work focused. I think it's a good list of people to be involved. Mark, I assume the Bugbee's open to residents outside of Hartford as well, right?
That's correct. So we are a designated service provider by the State Unit on Aging for Meals on Wheels. And so we serve North Heartland, Hartford, Norwich, and Thetford. We receive funding from Norwich, Hartford, and Thetford. And just due to our mission and the nature of a lot of programs, it's really open to anybody in the community who would like to participate. We don't even have a strict age limit. What that all boils down to is what we see every year is about 2/3 of the people who use the facility, who use the senior center, are from Hartford, and nearly all of the community groups that use the facility outside of senior center hours are also from Hartford.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm just not, for something like this with its use across communities in the Upper Valley, like I'm not too worried about the residency stuff as much. And having options like narrowed down is extremely helpful. And of course, at the end of the day, the select board's got to say like, yep, this is what we want, especially if the cost is something where we're going to ask for a bond or something like that. So, I mean, the buck kind of stops with us. I don't think our authority is really limited, even, hey, you could bring back recommendations and the will of the board could be to go in a different direction. It's just kind of how it goes. So I just want to put that in there. And so I strongly support the creation of this group. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Do we want to adjust the recommendation at all? And actually, I'll get back to you. Or just leave it as it is and, or to say not more than 15 people. I don't know. You said, Mark, that some people might fulfill both jobs and everything. So
I was actually worried that 11 might be too unwieldy.
I know. That's what I was wondering too. With asking for more people, I think it becomes more difficult to work with. So I don't know.
Did someone ask for more people?
Well, I thought Eric was saying to be more members of the public. I thought that was your recommendation.
Or a different mix of the 11, perhaps.
I was, I guess in my mind, I was distinguishing between voting members and consultants or members of staff who were participating in the discussion. What we'll be getting as a board is recommendations that the committee votes on, I think. And so that was sort of central to my thinking was Hartford's going to pay for Hartford's footing the bill for this. So it'd be nice to see more residents, and also it would be nice to see a different distribution of town staff as voting members versus the general public. And you know, when I read the charge, I didn't take away a whole lot of technical content. You know, it seems pretty open to non-technical kinds of discussions as well. But I can appreciate the unwieldiness of large groups and decision-making and just coordinating schedules. So.
Yeah, when I said technical, I really meant more just understanding of the capital improvement planning process, which is probably something that most people in the community can grasp. So would definitely be open to that. Yeah. Oh, sorry. And the second thing, there is nothing saying that the ultimate result will fall entirely on the shoulders of the town of Hartford, because there are residents from other communities that do benefit from the facility and from the operations that happen there. We see that even with the Council on Aging's operating budget, we're looking at 15 to 20% is funded by Hartford, but we do draw on other sources, and presumably that would also be the case for any significant capital investments in here. So,
and the hunt is always on for grants.
Yes.
I think Ashley had a question and I had a question.
Yeah, I also really support the formation of this committee. I think it's great. I wish I had enough free time to apply, pending, don't count me out. But I wanted to echo that I do like Eric's recommendation about trying to just make sure that we're having as many Hartford residents involved. It is good to hear that there is funding coming from some of the other towns that whose residents are able to take advantage of the services. So that's helpful to know as well. But my piece that I wanted to kind of put in front of you is that I work in construction, and while I love the products that architects can produce, it is often the case that a builder or building trades person could come up with a similar solution at a much lower cost. And it may not have the curb appeal or, you know, some of the elements that an architect could provide. But my piece on the makeup of this committee is that if possible, have more building trades people.
Yeah.
I think this is that's the heart of this project. And if you can and there may be many folks who are active members at Bugbee who have a history in buildings trades. Those would be great people to see on this committee.
Yeah, and likely
and
others
systems,
and likely others in the community as well. Yeah, no, I think that's great.
Dana, of course, has his fingerprints quite heavily on the systems at Bugbee.
Oh yeah,
and so that's one person we have in mind as well. Yeah.
Great.
Just wanted to echo that I really like the suggestion, Mark, of having sort of like dual roles, like as many of these people, if there are also active Bugbee community members, like the board member, person with legal finance background, person with building trades, like having those people also be people that use and love Bugbee would be amazing. And so maybe just to make a suggestion for the revised recommendation, we could just say fill positions using the above list as a guide or something like that to leave a little more flexibility. And I would trust that you both would take all of this discussion into account.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And yeah, when the committee is chartered, you'll see sort of what the final breakdown is as well. So.
Okay.
Mike has it.
Okay, Mike, he might be ready to leave. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I love spending my vacation at the board meetings. But what I was just going to say, I mean, I don't know like what the urgency precisely is on John and Mark's end, and whether this can something we want to just get done tonight, or if we want to bring it up again next next meeting, because, we're talking a lot about voting members, non-voting members. It doesn't say anything in the charge about, whether a member can vote or not. We're talking about wanting to increase the number of Hartford residents, and we just found out, I think Mark, you said something about 2/3 of the use of Bugbee is by Hartford residents. So, I mean, you could work that kind of thing into the charter itself, stating, basically like 2/3. The members of the charter, or the voting members, shall be residents of Hartford. So, I mean, that's just a thought as a way to move it along, but also at the same time, I mean, I thought Ida had a good suggestion as well, that, you'll just sort of take to heart what we said, as you go forward, like, appointing members to the committee. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. So where are we at?
A lot of good input.
I know. That's,
Madam Chair,
yes, Eric.
can we ask Mark and John to just respond to the urgency question?
Yep, sure.
Well, you've got a building that needs some work, or the town does, and you occupy a building that needs work. Wouldn't you like to move right along?
I absolutely would. Every season that goes by, there's something where I'm like, oh, that's going to be expensive. So I think it's overdue for real revitalization. So
Can I clarify the question? Is 2 weeks the factor? Like, so if there is some shifting sand here, and if we just say, hey, we want to table it, please take our recommendations under consideration and come back in 2 weeks. We put it on the agenda, and if we see, that those recommendations have been reflected, it's a 5-minute conversation.
Yeah.
I guess that's the 2-week window is the urgency question.
Put it this way, Mark and I hear you loud and clear. You've given us great input. I don't think we object to any of it. And so I don't even know the motion is needed tonight.
Yeah.
We'll come back with what we will consider our proposal, which will reflect a lot of this input. And maybe that'll just be the one time you act on it.
Sounds great. Love that.
Better yet.
I agree.
Yeah.
Good luck.
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. No.
Oh, and can I ask one last question on that? I'm sorry, Mary. So I know we talked a little bit about how you might kind of like solicit members for this committee. I assume that anytime that we create an ad hoc committee, and I could be wrong, we like make notice to the public, we give it to the communications director, he posts it online.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
that how it works with ad hoc committees? Okay.
Yep, yep.
I was just curious.
Yeah, I think with the amount of interest in just the focal point for in the community that Bugbee is, it will. I think we've already got people lining up for some of these positions. So yeah,
Sure. I have a feeling many of these people are right here.
Are you
they
guys
your-
future committee
they might be here for
members?
recycling. I don't know.
Oh,
Oh, even better.
Okay.
Oh, now I feel bad.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark.
So we will table this until we have
Humble.
A more final proposal, a more refined proposal.
yes, recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, so next agenda item is to discuss the select board training, leadership, and potential programs. And I think that the select board has received responses, or has given responses to, the initiatives that John has proposed.
Well, of course, Eric has
Yep.
some of his own as well.
Yep.
I have no pride in ownership or in advocacy. I'm simply teeing up an idea. Eric has teed up some others, and it'd be fascinating for me to sit back and listen to the select board's wishes as to how you'd like to proceed.
Open for discussion here.
I'll just kick it off by saying the old offer remains available to you, a facilitated gathering, whether you want to call it a retreat or a workshop or something else, to discuss team building, stakeholder outreach, and visioning for the future. But Eric has come forward with a lot more meat on the bones of his proposal. And again, I don't view them as competing. So it's a smorgasbord. Maybe we have multiple things that the board wants to do. I'm happy to help however I can.
Ashley?
Oh, no, Miranda. Are you sure?
Miranda. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I didn't see you.
I'm just gonna kick it off and say that I like Eric's proposal. Thank you, Eric, for putting all that together. That was like very helpful. And I don't see them as competing except for just time limitations of board members. You know, I'm interested, like if everybody else on the board felt like, hey, I have time to do 2 workshops in the next, also that's another question, is like, what's the time frame? Say it was 6 months or 3 months. I'd like to see it happen soon, but I could make that happen if we want to do both. If we are only going to try to dedicate time to one, I would prefer to move forward with Eric's proposal and kind of get some more details about what support you might need. And, you know, having it on paper is one thing, and then facilitating the workshop of a bunch of, you know, people with questions and things like that can be a challenge. So yeah, I'm curious about your thoughts on what that would look like.
Okay.
All right.
You may.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was not envisioning myself as the facilitator, to be perfectly clear. I was hoping that we could find someone maybe that has can bring some of the technical skills in project management world. My background is certainly not in municipal project management realm, and I'm not a facilitator.
That's a great plan.
What I had outlined for the board were sort of 3 questions. One was about so I understand that on the last board, and maybe for several years, Kim Souza served as the training coordinator. So that was one question, was, you know, should we identify a training coordinator or co-coordinators potentially, and then consider the immediate training or workshop needs and which direction we want to go there, and then any other ideas we might have about future workshops, including the one that John had proposed. And I think what I was also feeling is that some of the leadership principles that were in the one from VLCT maybe could be incorporated into this. So I guess my thinking is, rather than talking about how to lead, let's just get on with it. Let's build the roadmap. Let's show the board and the public where we're going, and give them an opportunity to, you know, so go through those steps I laid out, and then give them an opportunity to say, you know, we want this changed a little bit or whatever. We can have that back and forth. But it's really, I think most of us understand those principles. Maybe we don't practice them all the time. I certainly don't, but I think doing is going to reinforce them more than, you know, looking at slides, at least for me. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my pitch.
And Randy, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was honestly going to say something really similar to what Ashley said, is that thinking, I feel like these could complement each other really well if people had the time to do like a full day retreat. I do like the new agenda from VLCT, and then I really like Eric's as well. If I had to choose one though, I would lean towards just doing Eric's proposed plan.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Sure. I like Eric's plan, and I like how you just described it, of sort of like practicing some of the values through practicing them. Yeah, I would support, you know, something that's primarily looks like what Eric laid out, perhaps with some of the other topics that the VLCT one incorporated into that one. But yeah, I think I'm more in favor of a single workshop.
Got a philosophy, or, you know, have you any thoughts on this, Brandon?
I like them both, as everyone else has spoken so far. I think it would be great to have one follow immediately into the other, and just have a whole day thing. That seems to be easier for everyone's planning purposes to fit into their own lives, if it's possible.
I could see a scenario where VLCT has 2 or 3 hours with us in the morning on a more maybe broad agenda that they had, and then digging into Eric's in an afternoon session. If that was the consensus, to have a full day devoted to this.
But
Then we would need to find, in any event, we'll need to find a facilitator
Right.
who could kind of help us with Eric's agenda.
Right.
I guess
Miranda,
I was kind of wondering, do we have any idea what a facilitator might cost? Or if we have someone on
Kim
staff?
Souza, again, I guess would be a great resource since she helped find grant funding for a couple of trainings, one of which was the Wilder session, the outreach session we had there with communications being the topic, and the other being the strategic planning session. PR-ism was the outfit. And we might know through Gail, maybe in finance, as to who was the grant provider if Kim Souza can't provide that information to us.
Sorry, but I think there's budget funds for this.
Yeah, there is.
There is, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know that Kim had identified some grants
Right,
to pay for some
Right.
training.
right,
That might have been the PRISM funding.
right.
Tim would definitely know how much is allocated to it.
I want to say 16,000 is
Yeah.
still in our coffer for that training, but I may be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's like a substantial amount.
Yeah.
And this VLCT one was very low cost.
It
Yeah,
was.
that's right.
It
That's
was,
right. De minimis, I would say.
Right.
Yep.
right.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I would also like to do one long day rather than two short or half, it kind of ends up eating up a whole day anyway when you do a 4-hour thing. So I'd rather just do 6 or 8 hours in one.
I would only be concerned about, there is a downside to all day. People's level of energy and, creativity dissipates after a while. I mean, obviously we can do whatever we do, but from my experience, I think all days are very hard to complete with the same enthusiasm and creativity that, in either a morning or an afternoon. But that's just my feedback from other workshops and things that I've attended.
perhaps ensuring a long lunch break could help with it.
Don't fall asleep.
Well, I think the facilitator can have a big effect on that too.
Yeah.
Well, I'm generally in favor of anything that helps us get more work done.
Yeah.
Okay. So, do we need a motion to go forward on this? Or?
I've just dropped a note to Gail in case she's watching us online to ask about budget for training. But
Right.
that's something we can find out in the next few days. It's not urgent that we have it answered
Right.
tonight. But I mean, I guess what I'd like to see is some kind of consensus, maybe a show of hands as to who would like one versus the other, or would like us to try to do both. And then if it's both, would the preference be for a single day with a nice break, a stimulating, invigorating break, or a couple of separate Saturday mornings, for example?
Okay.
So maybe we should just start by isolating one of those and see where it goes, because that was
Yeah.
a whole lot of options.
Okay.
So how about this, a 6-hour Saturday with a 2-hour leadership session,
Mhm.
followed by a, 3 to 4 hour, annual work planning session.
Point of clarification, are we talking this summer, this spring, fall, winter? Like that's gonna impact how I choose, I guess. I don't know. Is there any timeline on this?
There's nothing that legally requires us to do anything.
Well, but I mean, like.
So whatever you'd like to do.
Yeah.
I would propose that we move sooner than later, because
Right.
every month that goes on, we continue to not communicate a roadmap.
Yeah. Okay, so soon.
Yeah.
Okay,
Not tomorrow, but soon.
right. Yes, carry on then with your.
Maybe the first thing I could do is, if there's an appetite for kind of both components of this, ask whether the VLCT facilitator is willing to do the second session working from your notes. He might find that intoxicating and quote us another small amount to handle the afternoon session as well before we start talking to other contractors.
Right.
I think that would be great, and I would be happy to speak to that person as
Yeah.
well. I can send them my way, and
Good.
they can maybe, if they have questions about what is in this proposal and so on, I'd be happy to talk to someone.
He's all about process and will view that as a catnip type opportunity. So yeah, I will put you in touch with him.
Great.
Okay, I could go along with that. I don't know about the rest of the people.
Yeah, I think as long as the deliverables are really clear and what our expectation at the end is, I think that's great.
I'm happy to follow up with our facilitator from VLCT about this scenario. And if I'll give you a report in 2 weeks, if not sooner. How's that?
That sounds good.
Good.
I have one more comment about
Yes.
content. I really feel strongly that part of this or a future training, but ideally this one will speak to efficiency in select board meetings.
Absolutely.
Because yeah, as I mentioned before, we had a evening, like 1.5 hour maybe session with Dominic Cloud from VLCT. And I feel like after that session, we were more efficient and we kind of were more focused. And I have some actually practical ideas of how we can improve time management during our select board meetings that I would love to discuss with everybody. And so yes, that's my suggestion.
Brandon?
Yes, thank you. I just want to put out there that I am all for efficiency. And yet, with what we do, there's also a high priority that we need to place, I think, on making sure that all the board members have a chance to ask what they feel they need to ask and say what they feel they need to say during these meetings. And that is just literally at direct odds with efficiency. I know that, I've had some, not always, but it can be. And so I'm, I would love ideas and love to implement ideas about efficiency, but it can't come at the expense of cutting folks off before they are finished saying what they need to say.
On the other hand, there's always the issue that it's getting more and more difficult to get people on the select board because it takes an inordinate amount of time, not just at our meetings, but all the work that we put into it, the trainings that we do, being on the Board of Civil Authority. And I think you have to, I'm probably, if you want to call it lucky, all of you have jobs. I'm retired, but it's, it's a lot of work and you're just discovering some of it. And we haven't even gotten, so those of you who are new, what it takes to go through budget season. So, I think we can be more efficient. I think there are ways, and something that I was actually reading the other day on parliamentary procedure, we do a lot of discussing, which is great because that's what we're supposed to do when we have proposals and things. But I also read, which I thought was interesting, when we discussed this parliamentary procedure said that once a motion is made, that, and I've been thinking of bringing this up for our rules and regulations. Once a motion is made and seconded, that each board member can only talk once before the vote. Because we've had the time to discuss, because we get into this habit of going back and going over a lot of the same things, which we're not supposed to be doing. We're not, encouraged to carry on and keep going over some of the same things. That's what I'm noticing. And that's just my experience. And like I said, I'm lucky. I don't have to work every day and get up and go to work. But it's really difficult for people to be here from 6 o'clock until 10 o'clock, sometimes 11 o'clock at night. And then you have jobs to go to. Ida?
Brandon, I want to thank you for mentioning that, bringing that up. I appreciate your thoughts on that. I think part of my personal goal with efficiency would be to create more efficiency in our meetings so we can allow for full and considered discussion among board members in a way that doesn't feel rushed.
Thanks, Ida.
Ashley?
Yeah, I would just say that I think that we can achieve both. I think there's room to aim for both efficiency and just like taking the time to discuss the things that do need to be discussed and making sure that our time is not spent on things that maybe are like, yeah, I agree with Ida that there are some things we can maybe look at. I also just want to circle us back to whether or not we were going to do like a raise of hand vote on full day, like these three options in the name of efficiency.
I thought we had, but you know, is everybody agreeable to that?
I think we were talking about the Saturday full day.
Yes.
And
yes, and a morning and
6
an
hours.
afternoon session.
Yes.
I don't think we
agreeable.
actually have to, because we haven't even contacted some of them. I don't think it's real important at this point to dictate. It has to be 2 hours to 4 hours, could be 3 to 3, it could be 2 to 3. I think that those are the little details that are really up to the facilitator.
And are we all happy with that full day? Did anybody not prefer that one?
Did we hear from Mike?
I see a consensus, maybe if not unanimity, but looks like we're getting there to consensus.
I think Mike probably is on. Oh, he is here.
You know, I'm still here. I mean, I would prefer a full day, but usually on these, well, Mary, you know,
Yep.
Chair, once you see 4 people sort of nod their head, you can kind of move it along, you know. I mean,
Right.
we don't need that in the minute.
Right. Thank you.
The timer just went off. I'm sorry.
One thing I'll mention about training, select board members have been polled about what tours they'd like to have of facilities. The leading candidate is the Department of Public Works, followed by Public Safety, followed by White River Junction Wastewater Facility. So stay tuned. We'll be trying to organize those for select board members.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mike. All right. So next item, consider researching recycling collection options.
Yes, Mary, as a follow-up to last meeting, I think we heard from both Brandon and Ashley that there was some interest in asking town staff to look at ways that we could develop programs or processes to help people deal with the new recycling landscape. Is fair enough? I'll leave it at that for discussion and for public input.
Brandon?
Mike has that covered.
Okay, Mike, go ahead.
Oh, thanks, because I do have to run. My apologies, particularly to people who've come into the public. I wasn't at the last meeting. I wasn't available. If I had voted, I would have voted with the majority, not to continue the contract. And there are plenty of different reasons why, but one, and I don't know how widely the public knows that if you have a private trash hauler, they have to take your recycling, and they're not supposed to charge you for it technically. But I know these discussions tonight, they can get really long, you know, and it's like kind of talking about things we've talked about before. But you know, just for the board, I mean, it seemed like based on the packet, you know, we have a couple proposals to have John basically go and do some research for us on alternatives and what they might cost and what that would mean. How much would it cost to get a truck, hire people to do service in town, you know, other stuff like that, or like, you know, putting out an RFP for different, you know, parts of the contract, things like that. And so I think those are all good ideas, you know, and I think I can't be here to vote. But just having John look at stuff and come back in some amount of time with some options, I think is a good idea. So I'm just because, you know, I think that's all that's really on this agenda item is whether we want to ask John to go do that. There's been a lot of public response. I think we know how a lot of people feel about it. You know, and it's, you know, it's a complicated issue with lots of different perspectives. So I just wanted to say that, and I will leave it at that.
Oh, muted yourself.
No, he just, it froze for a second.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm done. Thanks, guys.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thanks, Mike.
I'll just say that since the last meeting, my focus has been primarily, as you can imagine, messaging. Many thanks to Eric for helping with messaging and for looking at a postcard mailer that we're soon to be sending to people all across town. Because of course we can't rely on simply people watching social media or the website. A lot of people need their information in a mailing. And so that mailing should provide a lot of option information for people in terms of how they might contact their local haulers, how they might decide to use the transfer station, how they might decide to make use of the Lebanon transfer station, and also logging on to the town's web page, which discusses some of the raw data that informed the select board's decision to discontinue the service. But yeah, I've been focusing on how to inform the town. Now we're looking at condo associations, landlords. All of those people need to get the word if they haven't already, because June 30th is coming. But again, happy to hear what the board would like staff to do in terms of researching other alternatives.
I think that, I'm just gonna say upfront that I think what Mike proposed, and that sounds like we're all, at least you'd already seen what Brandon proposed, is just directing you to find out, some more information and to disseminate the information as much as we can possibly do to help people make that transition.
I wonder if these folks would like to speak on the issue of what you'd like staff to be looking into in terms of recycling options available with the discontinuance of the Casella contract on June 30th. We'd be happy to hear any suggestions.
John, you're gonna all good. I think I saw John's hand first, and then, and then, again, state your name and your residence.
Okay. John Reed, live in Quechee. I am a member, thanks to Eric, of the Climate Action Steering Team. And we have not had a chance to meet since the decision was made not to extend the contract. So I am not here speaking for CAST, but I am here saying that there are aspects of the climate action plan that are affected by the decisions we make with respect to recycling. That's point number one. Point number two is with our effort to start up styrofoam recycling, working with other local towns, Lebanon, Norwich, Hanover, etc. We have some experience in terms of group recycling. And I think when we're looking at options, we shouldn't narrow our focus. We should have a very broad look at recycling. And that includes, we should be providing some form of facility for solid or food waste recycling, which is required by the law but not enforced. And I remember several years ago at my house, we did contribute to a service that picked up the food waste, and ultimately it ended up, I think, enriching the soil at Chuck Worcester's farm, if I'm correct. So I would think that if we're going to take a look at recycling, it should be a look at a broad sense of recycling, not just a narrow one of replacing what we've had. And as a final thought on how broad we should look, I'm familiar with a recycling program in one town in Rhode Island where they they pick up their recycling once every 2 weeks, not every week. And I don't have any idea whether we need 1 week, 2 weeks, or a month. But again, if we're looking at this from a broad perspective, we ought to be looking at it in its various alternatives. And the final thing I'd like to say is that the popular conception is that what we put in recycling, for the most part, the majority of it, does not in fact get recycled. So if we're gonna go through this whole effort, let's make sure when we get through with it, if we have some sort of recycling, that it does in fact end up getting rid of some of the plastic. Because I don't know about you folks, but my nightmare is I'm gonna drown in little plastic bubbles.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Yep.
Hi there, I'm Lydia Taylor, and I would just like to say that I represent, you thought we were here for the Bugbee Senior Center with good reason. We are a community of older folk, and we recycle really very virtuously, and it is so easy for us who would have trouble lugging things around the community, you know, in the back of our cars, loading up and all that sort of stuff. So having the curbside recycling is just wonderful for us. And I'm sure that, I don't know what the percent of retired people are in our community, but I bet it's fairly high. And for those of us who are in that particular community, this curbside recycling really helps.
Thank you.
The newspaper, I'm Inga Brown from the homeowners association at Sterling Springs, yes. And I have recently suffered a stroke, and my thinking and speech is not as it should be. The newspaper article sent the message that they don't, having made the decision to discontinue the service, they don't know the answer of how our 72 houses at Sterling Springs are going to hurt. Now, speaking simply for myself, there's no way I can physically get 2 weeks of recyclables in my car, let alone cart it somewhere and hope shift it into a box or something like that. I am not fit to do that, and I am going to hurt. Because, you know, we don't know what alternatives we have. What we had the last few years, every 2 weeks, the Casella would come by and pick up the stuff that we had put on curbside, which was just about enough that I could do. And I'm not the only one. There are lots and lots of them. And the result is going to be that nobody is going to go to curbside or recycling of this nature. And it's going to end up in the dumpster.
May I respond by just saying I certainly hope not, because of course Vermont law requires recycling of recyclable materials.
Yeah,
and
then you should provide it.
well, there is any number of private haulers who now collect garbage, who by law are required to collect recycling. And I imagine that a lot of those private entities are going to be reaching out to you, trying to solicit your business to pick up your recycling in much the same way that Casella has been doing it before. We had a program where we basically were a pass-through. Taxpayers paid into the town hired Casella to do it. With the town deciding that the cost was too much and that we could not digest it in the current budget that has been approved, the result is that some of the same recycling can simply be picked up by Casella or their competitors in this area and still brought and recycled. So your lives don't necessarily have to change.
Well, we're not, but what Casella has said to us is, we can't figure out how to do curbside. So we would, what they're telling us at this point is we would need to have a central dumpster, which puts in the same.
Oh, I see. Within your housing complex. I see. I see. I see.
Which is why the curbside for us just won't traffic.
May I?
Go ahead, Ida.
Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
And I hope your heart takes this into consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you so much for coming in tonight and
Yes,
sharing
it's
with
very
us.
late.
It is.
Yes, me too.
For many of us.
And not only that, I gave up having the performance of the Dark Symphony.
Oh.
And I've paid for it.
Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Yeah.
That's how urgent I felt. This was more urgent than.
Yeah. Well, part of my response was just to encourage your community to look into alternatives to Casella who do offer curbside. And I believe John and our communication specialist will include information about specific service providers in our area who may be able to fill this gap.
In fact, it's already on the website now, a list of local haulers who by law are required to collect your recycling.
Can I point out, but they're not by law required to take on more clients though, right?
Well, that's true. That's true. They're a private entity, they're private entities, but they're private entities who you would presume would want more business. I know Casella's planning to reach out to the community with their own proposals to pick up garbage and or recycling.
But not curbside, at least not curbside.
Brandon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to read out the email of mine that ended up in the packet here to be clear what I was suggesting. I would like to propose to the board, which is the email I sent 2 weeks ago. I would like to propose to the board that we direct the town manager to take a period of 6 to 8 weeks, for instance, to investigate the costs and outline and propose a plan for providing recycling collection by town staff, starting with the start of fiscal year 2027, which admittedly is a ways away, but it's the amount of time that we can budget for. And so what I meant by investigate the costs and outline and propose a plan is just that. I suppose not necessarily a plan, but options if need be. I've mentioned several times in these board meetings that one option could be for the town to have a truck and a staff member do this collection. Another option, which I've discussed with some board members over the last week or so, could be to kind of allow some private haulers to take on parts of our pickup map and kind of divide it up piecemeal, or ask haulers whether they would be interested in receiving a part of our pickup map, that sort of thing. There are various solutions to this that could work, but I would like to see the town staff doing some brainstorming on how it could work. Because the problem in my mind with Casella was their profit margin, which they insisted upon, and their insistence that we fund their new trucks over a certain small period of time, just maybe a year or so, when those trucks clearly last a lot longer. And if we had the truck, it would last a lot longer. So thank you. That is what I wanted to discuss and propose. And I also wanted to discuss with other board members. I know other board members here have other ideas, and I'd love to hear them. Thank you.
I'll just say, I don't mean to be a wet blanket here, but the research that I've done thus far indicates that while recycling continues to be the law, and while virtually every Vermont town has a program in place to encourage recycling, either through private haulers or their transfer stations, the number of towns in Vermont that offer town staff operated recycling collection is very small and getting smaller due to the economics involved in it. And you see that the trend is that even for some of the more progressive communities to revisit the issue, Burlington is considering ending their curbside recycling program. Hanover is having heartburn about the affordability of its program, and that might be only here for another year, depending on which direction they're going in. And there are other towns like Linden that have recently ended their curbside recycling program. So let me just say, I'm more than happy to do all this research and make you aware of options available to the town, but it might be that other towns have done so and come to a negative conclusion as to feasibility. That's all I'm going to say.
And were those examples all town collect? Sorry, you said Burlington and Hanover. Do they do their own town collection?
Hanover has a contract with Casella. They're going to seek a 1-year extension while they evaluate their options. That's according to an email from the town manager. Burlington, I think, is an in-house operation that they're thinking of shutting down. But fair enough to say Burlington has plenty of other budget concerns that might be driving that decision.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand the concerns of the public. And this is actually a great time. If we had a roadmap for the board, we would know what we're trading off. We're asking the town manager to do one thing. We don't know what opportunity costs are. In other words, what can he not do if he's doing this work? And I appreciate the the sort of the broader feasibility picture. I guess what I want to do is echo a little bit of what Planning Commission Chair John Reed spoke about earlier, which is sort of stepping back and looking at the system from a holistic perspective. Solid waste in its entirety, because we know we've got to deal with the transfer station. And to deal with these things in isolation doesn't make sense to me. We sort of need to go all the way back to what are our goals? And our goals really are, or one of the primary ones that jumps to mind for me is less trash, right? Less recycling. The less that goes into the recycling bins, the better. And then there's some downstream activities that we can't control, but certainly less that goes in is better. So I'm generally in favor of asking the town manager to explore options, a wide range of options, starting with like a brainstorming kind of look at things, and then maybe doing sort of a back of the napkin feasibility, or at least give us a sense as a board of a comparison. Running a municipal service would be this. Maybe some of the other options don't pan out, or what have you. But I would be in support of continuing the conversation up to the point of sort of napkin feasibility and see where it goes, but casting that conversation in the context of solid waste, recycling, trash, whatever, in Hartford, and understanding what we're doing at the transfer station at the same time.
And we should know more about the transfer station in one of the upcoming meetings. Some of the new members don't know, but there's been an ongoing study by Sanborn Head about what are the feasible options for the future of the transfer station. And of course, a lot of that depends on what the programming is. But there are some core functions: collecting the garbage of the townspeople and disposing of it in environmentally sustainable or sound way. And there are hazardous waste recycling events that we're required to conduct. But a lot of the operations of the transfer station will be discussed soon by the board with presentation by Brian Gazda and Sanborn Head.
Miranda and then Ashley.
Do you know when that presentation is?
I don't know exactly, but I do expect that it'll be in May or June.
Okay.
Yeah, soon.
Okay, because I'm also wondering too, it feels like I guess if you are employed to go on this task of researching for the next few weeks, I'm wondering if it might make sense to reach out to Burlington, Burlington's town manager, because to me, it seems like we just need to beat Casella's offer. It's clear to me through communications with community members that this is something that is a real detriment to lose this service. And I also fear that in the future, when we are flush with lots and lots of tax dollars that we don't know what to do with, that it will still be hard to re-implement something like this. People are really invigorated by it right now, but it might be hard to reinvigorate them on something 5 years down the line. And so, yeah.
And yet both realities can't be true. We can't have terminated the program and still be talking about having the program, right?
You might be surprised.
But yeah, just wondering if, or thinking about when you're doing that research too, maybe exploring like, is recycling becoming more expensive? Or is that kind of just what?
Well, I think Eric did a service by circulating an article he had seen in his research, but a lot changed when the People's Republic of China decided that they didn't want to accept dirty recycling, which a lot of ours was, because maybe we didn't take care to clean it, sort it, and send it over in usable fashion. So that's the loss of a huge market for that commodity, if we want to call it a commodity. I think that that really just changed the landscape and the profitability for some entities of recycling.
Yeah.
And Ashley.
Yeah, the more I have a couple thoughts. The more that I hear you talk about and is it John's comments too on the big picture. And then I also think about the transfer station. I almost feel like this is something that if there ever was a good call for an ad hoc committee, this is it. Like our waste stream is a huge, I mean, solid waste, like how compost plays into that. And so I just wonder what other, that's one thing. Like, I wonder if there's maybe room for that. And we have so many great like committees and boards and like groups in Hartford that I'm sure would be able to lend members to a really educated committee. So that's one thing. The other thing I was going to say is that Brandon kind of laid out two options. Or is it three? That the town has a collection truck. That you had a great thing that you said. I said, oh, well, a third option is that we put a vote on the next town meeting or the next budget to put curbside from Casella back in the budget. Like, I'm hearing from residents, they would pay the extra, what did it work out to? $100 a month or less than that in taxes to have that service on an average $250,000 home. I think the cost of it was an increase of like $100, or I think it was in total $112 for the whole bid. So not an increase. Yeah, the increase must have been less than that. So anyways, we're not talking about a lot of money per year. I understand that what Casella's bid is, you know, I don't love it. I'm not like, I don't think that it's right that this for-profit company is kind of, I feel, price gouging us. That's my personal opinion. But at the end of the day, we live in this economy, in this world, and like I'm getting price gouged everywhere I go. Everything I pay for is insane, especially when it's these larger companies that don't feel so local, that are making like billions of dollars a year. So I think that it's worth putting it as a proposal in our next budget that we go with Casella. We update the bid with Casella and we put it to the voters. That's probably, to me, the most time effective resolution. Like if we want recycling back now, that's probably the quickest way we're gonna get it. My other comment is just that this conversation should have happened before we canceled the contract. Like, I can't let that go. I'm sorry. So yeah.
In reading the documentation that you had in your last meeting, the letter from Mr. Gazda. Oh, I'm sorry. Jim Fortmuller from Wilder. One of the things that he said was that 68% of the respondents to the survey said that they would either use the Lebanon or the Hartford facilities. And then 25% said that they would use the one of the other haulers. And 30% said that they would use quote unquote other means, which probably means they'll throw it in the trash. That comes out to 123% though. So there's going to be more than 30% of the residents here who will actually just say, you know what, this is not worth it. I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. Put it in a garbage bag and bring it to the waste station. And the biggest problem that I can see in most communities and this community here as well is there's no room in our waste facilities to take on another couple of 100 tons of waste that we could be recycling. In places where I've lived, we've had the same issues where waste facilities are full. The lack of affordability of recycling, very much due to the Chinese turning us away, caused those localities to say, you know what, we have to double down on recycling. And so they put out recycling bins for us to use. And in my experience, I have more recycling than I do trash. And I think most of us do. Everything that we buy is packaged ridiculously too much, unless we go to the little co-op down, around the corner here, where you buy things in bulk, you bring your own packaging in and whatnot. But most of us don't have the time or energy to do that either. So my only question was, and to your point, Ashley, is that this probably should have been discussed and to your point as well, in the whole, in a holistic way, and said, how do we prevent this from happening? I understand Casella wants to make money, and I understand that they have a monopoly in this area, and I understand that they're running into trouble with their facility up by St. Johnsbury. But they have us a little bit over a barrel, but I do think that we could promote this instead of sending out a Dear John letter saying, sorry, we don't have the ability to do this, and here's what your options are. Maybe, and this is not to knock you at all, but maybe a year ago when we saw this and it was being tabled to investigate other things, is to try to promote more people to engage in this, because out of 5,000 residents, you said, somebody said that only half of the residents are actually taking part in recycling. And I think we could probably do a lot better than that if we had a little bit of advertisement and encouragement and explanation of what the issues are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Miranda.
The online comment.
Yes.
Go ahead, Heidi.
Good evening, Heidi Due to White River. I wrote quite a few emails on this, asking about funding, how we could fund this, different avenues to take. I probably wore out my keyboard, drove John nuts, Gail nuts, Brian nuts. I've attended quite a few meetings, and in those meetings in the last almost 5 years that I've been attending, I've missed very few. And in those meetings, we've had many, many discussions about closing our transfer station. We've spent probably $150,000. I mean, Gail Ostrett would know better, but about $150,000 on surveys to close our transfer station. Yet now we want to discuss expanding our hours, hiring yet another employee to handle the recycling there, extending the hours of another employee or two, maybe, I don't know how many more. We won't have the space to handle the recycling at that transfer station. We would still have to use Casella to pick up the recycling, which is another cost. It just doesn't make any sense. You would have people sitting idling in their vehicles, which would also go against our climate action plan. Brandon's idea of having a private hauler, well, then you have more haulers on the road. Then if you want to go and get your own truck for the town, well, you would have to have an extra truck, because if the first truck breaks down, well, you've got to have a backup truck. Then you got to hire
Heidi, I think that what we're trying to do is stick with the item I, consider researching recycling collection options, and not discuss everything tonight. This is, we're now starting to talk about composting and transfer station. And we did have in the last year, we did have 3 select board meetings where we discussed the transfer station. We've had 3 meetings where we've discussed recycling. We could go on.
Mary, excuse me. You're very rude. You're very disrespectful. I am a taxpayer.
I know that.
I am done with your blatant rudeness. I am done with this town. It is time for me to go to Montpelier, and I will be hiring the best friggin' law firm that my money can buy. And trust me, I've got my money, so thank you very much. Fuck you all.
Thank you, Heidi.
I'm done. I'm done. Every single one of you in that town.
So,
is that okay?
Okay, I think people,
Yes,
we
that
need
is
to,
okay.
is there anybody in here who would like to say another word? Because we either have to move on, if this is a motion, or you're just directing, I would assume you're directing the town manager to do some investigations.
And that would be a board decision.
And that would be a board decision. So I'm gonna need a motion here before we continue to talk about everything that we've been talking about for many hours. And I'm not just mean tonight. I'm just saying this because, if Mike were still here, he would tell you the hours we have spent talking about these issues. And I know they're important, and I know change is very difficult. And I know it was a very difficult decision for this board to make what they did. But with the information that we had, we made that decision, and now we're trying to muddle through and do the best that we can for this town, because I really do believe that there are good people in this town who really want to do what we can to make life the best we can for the town of Hartford. And sometimes it doesn't work out the way that we'd like to. And I'm going to be affected by the recycling too. So, it's not like it's some of us and not the others. So I think we need to make a motion, if we're going to make a motion, and move on this. Brandon?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I move that this board direct the town manager with the assistance of town staff as he sees fit to take a period of 6 to 8 weeks to investigate various options for recycling collection at curbside, including a proposal for town staff to do this collection, among whatever other options he sees fit.
I'll second.
Okay. We have a second from Ashley. I don't think Mike is still on, but I'm still gonna call a roll call vote. So I'm gonna start with Eric this time.
Aye.
Brandon?
Aye.
Ida?
Aye.
Brandon?
Aye.
Ashley?
Aye.
And Mike, if you're still there? I thought he left, yes. Okay, and I will say aye. So that is 6-0. And we will move on from there. And I want to thank all of you for coming. We really appreciate it. We know it's late. It's hard to be driving at nighttime, so please drive safely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and so we will move on to commission reports, and I'll
Thank you,
start
sir.
with Ashley. Are there any?
Nothing to report.
Okay, Brandon?
None from me.
All right, Ida?
None.
Miranda?
I do have a report from the tree board. We did the Arbor Day sale last Saturday before last. We sold 115 trees, plants, and shrubs. Made $1,944.10 in profit. We were able to donate 2 trees to the White River Elementary School to replace some oaks that had been removed. So the 5th grade class is going to plant those trees and then watch them grow. So when they graduate, they'll be able to see the difference between those little baby trees to hopefully big, luxurious, beautiful trees. And then we also sold some nursery trees at a discount to assist the work going on at Clifford Park.
Great, thank you, Miranda. Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brief report from the Hartford Historical Preservation Commission. Wilder residents Harry Kendrick, Phil Sargent, and Bonnie Arnold are working on a proposed historical sign to be located behind the guardrail on Passumpsic Road across from Depot Street. The sign will provide information about the history of Wilder Village on one side and the history of the Wilder paper mill on the other side. Timeline and unveiling are still pending the fundraising effort that is going on. And the Historical Preservation Commission is seeking new members. They're at a quorum now. It's a 5-member commission, and they have 3. So if you know anyone who's might be interested, and it's not just about buildings, it extends beyond that to things like the art scene in White River, or interviewing dairy farmers throughout the area, and so on.
Or weather vanes with choo-choo trains.
Right.
Thank you. And moving on briefly to the Conservation Commission, the Trails Day for the Town Forest is Saturday, June 7th from 9 to noon. There's cleanup work from the April ice storm, new trailhead kiosk maintenance, trail reblazing, and other work, and that will be followed by a cookout. So that's Saturday, June 7th, 9 to noon.
Thank you, Eric. And I have no commission reports.
And just a reminder, if anybody wishes their reports to be in the minutes, please send them along to Lana.
All right, consent agenda. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
Madam Chair.
Ida?
I move that we approve payroll ending April 26, 2025. And the AP manifest of 4/25, 2025 and 5/1, 2025. And the meeting minutes of 4/15, 2025. And the future meetings scheduled for May 27th, 2025, June 10th, 2025, and June 24th, 2025.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, Brandon, and all in favor, I'm gonna say because Mike's gone. I'm going, efficiency. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that's 6-0. Okay, we are not, there is no executive session, and so I'll take a motion to adjourn select board meeting.
So moved.
Eric, second?
Second.
I'll say Miranda. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 6-0. Good night, everybody.
There's documents to be signed by those who haven't yet signed them.